And everybody, the time being 4 o'clock, we'll open the Hobart Workshop Committee for the 24th of August. Welcome to councillors, elected members, to staff and to visitors that we have today. I don't believe we have any apologies or leaves of absence today.
No.
It's excellent, so full house. I would... I know. I'll note the attendance for the record at this stage. We have myself, Chair, Councillor Ryan Posselt, the Deputy Lord Mayor, Linda Sherlock, Councillor Bill Harvey, Councillor Ben Loberger, Alderman Louise Bloomfield, Councillor Will Coates, Councillor Mike Dutta, the Lord Mayor Anna Reynolds, Councillor John Kelly, Councillor Louise Elliott and Alderman Marty Zuko. Welcome. I would note that we don't have an apology from Councillor Kidsos yet, and I'll acknowledge her. I believe she's in the building, so I'll acknowledge her shortly when she comes in. We are meeting today on Palawa land that was never ceded, and I do think it's always important to just take a moment to consider our history and our past, and how the decisions that we make around this table impact on our relationships with the Palawa people and their continuing culture. So if we can have a confirmation of minutes, please. Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried unanimously. Consideration of supplementary items. Are there any supplementaries?
None tonight, Chair.
No supplementaries. Welcome, Councillor Kidsos, who has joined the room. Item 4, indications of conflicts of interest. Do any councillors have any conflicts of interest today? No, very good. Item 5, transfer of agenda items. Does anyone wish to transfer any items in the open? Very good. Is there any items in the closed agenda that we would like to transfer? Yeah, I will. So you want to move report? Yeah. If I can have elected member move that we do questions without notice in the closed, so that's item 5, prior to the CEO performance review, which is item 4, which will allow some staff to leave and just make it neater. Thank you, Councillor Coates. Any debate on that? All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Okay, so we'll move on to reports of special committees. Item number 6, 6.1, the Transport Committee. If I can have somebody to move that, please, for receiving and noting. Councillor Kidsos. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Dutta.
Thank you. I refer to page 7 of this particular item, and I just want some clarification with regards to the Crown licence and its Crown lease. So it is Crown licence, I understand this is. And wondering if the mention that there is a bit of a discussion going on with the implications, can individual licences be requested by the council to have a look at the terms and conditions?
CEO.
So my advice on that is no, that we're not able to access those.
Can I just ask a supplementary
Councillor
there? Is that a power that the state government has?
Yes, well they issued the licence. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Lord Mayor.
Would it be possible for the council to do a right to information to access them?
I mean, we could try, but I'm not sure that we would be successful. But I have asked our legal people to have a look at that because the question was asked of me earlier in the week, or late last week rather.
Excellent. And as Chair, before I move that, I will just note that there were some really productive discussions. We invited members to speak and had a bit of a listening session at the Transport Committee and just heard what the Motorbike Association wanted to tell us was important for them, what some community advocates wanted to say was important for them, and it was really a productive session to really lean into the community and hear from them in a community session rather than us telling them what was happening. that was the main theme of this particular Transport Committee as we've come together for today. So all those in favour of receiving and noting that report?
Aye.
And against? Carried unanimously. Moving on to 6.2, the City Economy Committee. I believe Alderman Bloomfield, you're the chair of that one? Very good. Yeah, if you'd like to move it and if you'd like to speak to it briefly, that'd be great.
Yeah, basically, I believe we had 3 attendees in the last committee meeting, and looking forward to seeing this group be developed in the new term coming forwards. We did discuss things like the Hobart gift card program, as you can see, and business grants and so forth. Ultimately, I think it was just a good, productive meeting at this point in time. So just to receive the note.
Very good. Thank you very much, Alderman Bloomfield, for that update. And if you're happy to move it.
Can I just ask a question?
Of course, Councillor Harvey.
How many people on your committee?
I think there's only about 6 because we've had we've had quite a number either sell their business, leave interstate, things like that. And the problem we have is that I know students were put on there who never turned up. We had a real problem with the fact that the way we put them on was very limited. And because the terms originally, I feel, probably weren't as business oriented as possibly I would have liked. Obviously, none of us really got to decide how this was put together. It created an environment which allowed for more, transient people to be part of the room. So as a result, we have predominantly Salamanca stallholders being represented. So someone representing a number of people. We have the Confederation, Great Business Hobart now represented there. Number of large people there, and also an accounting firm who also is represented, being John Elliott. So we do get some kind of representation, but I would look forward to seeing it being altered in a more appropriate way, more in line with what we have with the Safety Alliance, where the people were more
Representative of
yeah, it was a different function. The people were sought, it was identified. I feel that's probably where we're going to go next as well.
Thanks for that. Is there any further questions? I think that it's always an opportunity to reassess how we do our governance at the next, after the next election, so it'd be great to hear your insights for how we can strengthen that one. All those in favour of receiving and noting?
Aye.
Against? Carried unanimously. We'll move on to item 7, reports, and we'll have the Macquarie Point consultation noise and vibration, which is condition A6 of the stadium development, I believe. And we'll invite Miss Karen Avey, Director, up to join us. And Karen, will you be joined by anybody today?
Yes, I will.
Excellent.
I'll introduce
Please.
Aidan Daniels, who is our specialist environmental noise, to answer any questions that elected members have of a technical nature. We do also have some representatives from Macquarie Point Development Corporation if we need any further information from them. And in a moment, there we go, we also have their noise expert online as well. Just a very brief introduction. Elected members will have seen a couple of consultations come through the Planning Authority Committee meetings. The majority of the consultations will come through that pathway. As I was preparing the report for this one, I realised that the order, with all of its quirks, requires this consultation to be with the council as the elected body. And the reason for that is that the council does not have compliance responsibilities for noise and vibration through the construction phase. So those responsibilities lie with the EPA. So we are being consulted by MPDC and that's what we're here to do tonight. We don't have a presentation, but we are available to answer any questions that you may have about these rather dense documents.
Excellent. Perhaps we can just get a really brief overview of what the conditions are on the noise through the construction phase, and then we'll move on to questions for those who have caught up in the documents.
So the question was?
What are the conditions? What are we particularly concerned about? And what should we be questioning and interrogating you today?
The way that the order is set up. We've got the framework document, which I believe was prepared by ACOM, the sub-plan that sits underneath that, and together they essentially form, it's in the name, a framework of what the stage-specific construction noise and vibration management plans need to do for each stage of the construction process. The framework documents we've had a chance to review and provide feedback on. We've recently also been able to provide feedback on the stage-specific Stage 1 and Stage 2 construction noise and vibration management plans, which were for the earthworks and for the goods shed works, not the preparatory works, which I believe are exempt from that. That's essentially the package of documents you've received. I'm prepared to answer any questions you have on them. But in general, I'm quite satisfied with the way the framework is set up. I believe it's industry standard. In Tasmania, we don't have legislation on which we could build this. It's based on the New South Wales Interim Construction Noise Guideline, which I believe is industry best practice in Australia. Other states point to it as well. In lieu of anything specific to Tasmania, that's the best that can be done, and it's, I believe the framework is a good roadmap for success. If everything's done in line with the framework, I believe everything will be managed appropriately.
Thank you so much. I might just quickly ask the Director if there's anything that staff have picked up that you wanted to convey from a senior staff perspective, and then we'll open to elected members.
I'll just indicate, as Aidan said, the framework and the sub-plan were documents that Aidan was able to review, provide feedback, and then we received what you have before you today. So basically our feedback has already been incorporated excuse me, into those documents. The Stage 1 and Stage 2 documents are the initial drafts. Aidan has provided very technical feedback to them, which is summarised in the report for elected members, rather than you seeing the fairly technical details. In discussions with MPDC, they are happy to accommodate the changes that Aidan has suggested. There just hasn't been enough time to get the updated document onto the agenda, but the recommendation does reflect the fact that there is anticipated amendments to those documents.
Fantastic. Thank you, Director. We'll open for questions, and then we'll come to debate after questions. Councillor Lohberger.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Karen and Aidan. I've just got some questions about the summary that you've popped into the report, sort of on page 17 of the agenda. There's quite a few issues there that you've raised, the summary of them, and then there's a reason why you've raised them. But I guess I'm wondering what the outcomes were of all of these comments and advisories, all going to now be taken on board by the process? Is there any that aren't?
In the discussions we've had with MPDC are that these changes will be made to the documents to incorporate our feedback.
Great, that's great. And just as a second question, just the complaint process. I mean, if someone's business or, say, God forbid, the TSO during a concert are affected by noise, what is the potential pathway that they can take?
So there is a complaints process required under the order for MPDC to be the first point of contact for complaints, and a resolution to those complaints can be expected from MPDC. Ultimately, it's the Environmental Protection Authority that has oversight of compliance. So I imagine there will be a process between the EPA and MPDC in terms of ensuring that all complaints are resolved promptly.
And we're comfortable with that to date?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Councillor Harvey.
Does this report and your views include everything into the future as well? So you've got the demolition of sheds and things, you've got the construction, you've got the piling, which won't be, I imagine that'll be screwed rather than bashing piles into the ground. All noises associated with this project, and post-construction noises associated with games, is that included as well?
No, it's not. So this is just Stage 1 and Stage 2. Mm-hmm. Stage 3, which is the construction of the stadium, and Stage 4, which is the operation. Their later processes, they will come to you again in the same format.
Yeah, okay.
It's probably worth noting as well that the order specifically requires consultation with a number of other bodies, including the TSO. That consultation has been progressed by MPDC, and as I understand it, the views of those organisations taken into account as well.
And just when it comes to vibration, what would be causing those vibrations? Because I'm assuming that would either be piling, or is it the movement of vehicles? And if we're not going to be piling, or we're going to be jackhammering, we're going to be pulling bedrock out, or what are those noises associated with?
So on the piling, that'll not be stage 1 or 2 as far as I'm aware. The stage 1 is the demolition of the goods shed, and the stage 2 is the bulk earthworks. The majority of the vibration from those stages will be, stage 1 will be the demolition of the slab, which I believe is the final part of stage 1. That would probably be the most vibration intense.
That would be jackhammering, for example.
I believe it would be a breaker-mounted pneumatic hammer
Yep.
or hydraulic breaker. They're quite noisy as well. I believe that's from recollection over about 5 days worth of work. But the works from stage 2, which would be the bulk earthworks, generally speaking, I believe vibratory rolling will probably be the most vibration intense component of that works. And you're correct, later stages usually, depending on the type of piling, board piling, sheet piling, I'm not across what's being done on this one for later stages. I imagine it would be board piling. Those are quite vibration and noise intense activities, which we'll address at those stages. But the framework is set up to address those things. Based on personal experience, the first 4 or 5 years of my career I was working on this type of work in a private consulting. Very easily managed with noise and vibration monitoring on the site, which the framework is set up to have done at those stages based on the stage-specific assessments.
And these same sort of assessments, last one, are also done on other construction projects in Hobart, like the hospital redevelopment and other major developments that have occurred in Hobart. It's just a much higher level of compliance required.
I'm not across what's being done for the hospital, but I can say in terms of what's done that I'm aware of in the city, this is probably the most robust assessment that has been done in the city, at least I've only been here for this year, but that I can speak of the most robust assessment. I've personally been taking a lot of lessons learned from the framework and adapting it to perhaps what council requires from contractors in the future, given we don't have our own legislation from the state on construction noise and vibration.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Kitsos.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering if we're privy to any of the content of the discussions with the groups they're consulting with. Just obviously they're important parts of the vibrancy of our city. Do you expect that those kind of consultations are sort of two-way, or is it more about delivering information about the program of works and how, say, the TSO might schedule their program so that it doesn't become interrupted, or do you feel like there's some negotiation in terms of what might have already been scheduled from these other organisations' perspectives?
The framework is set up to encourage coordination between not just the parties that are part of this consultation period, of which the council is one of those parties. The framework, which is based on the New South Wales guideline, is essentially set up to encourage, and it would be reinforced in the stage-specific plans, coordination between all the nearest and most affected residences and businesses. TSO would be obviously highly sensitive to noise. Residents nearby are highly sensitive to noise and vibration. There'll be coordination between the principal and the contractor, MPDC, and those residents. It's expected to be, these types of projects are always a back and forth. So there'll be, my understanding, a high level of communication between them. The framework is quite general in its nature because it's meant to cover everything. The stage-specific stuff speaks to each of the types of construction that they're doing. As far as I'm aware, stage 1 and stage 2 I don't believe include, no, scratch that, I don't believe they include night works, but that may be the type of thing that they would discuss if it becomes necessary. The intention being to make sure they have the minimal amount of impact on the nearest neighbours. They've got criteria in place to make sure if they're exceeding particular noise limits or vibration limits at particularly sensitive receptors, they take the data that they're capturing live, they take any complaints they receive, and it informs an investigation process to, look at mitigation strategies or changes to their work schedule or selection of different equipment, whatever the needs dictate.
Great.
So I believe the feedback loop for this will be good.
Great, thank you.
No worries.
Councillor Dove.
Thank you. Chair, I have 4 questions. I can, just ask 1 or 2 and then come back later. I will be guided by you.
Come back later if you've got a contribution. If you have a question, make
But
it.
no, I have 4 questions, so do you want me to ask 4
Yep,
questions?
all 4 in a row.
Okay, all right,
Yep, go
thank
for
you. That's the clarification I needed. I just need some clarification with regards to the hydraulic use. Will that be hydraulic hammering, and is it possible to measure the intensity of that or not?
Yes,
And how-
it's also possible to predict the intensity of that. It's a bit of a generalist procedure, but they're quite well known, quite well documented equipment. You can predict the impacts from a breaker or a pneumatic hammer based on the size of it. So the stage-specific assessments do predict the noise and vibration from those equipment and outline where, for example, there'll be some exceedances of the criteria for the braking because it is incredibly loud. My understanding is there would likely be noise and vibration monitoring associated with those works to make sure that the model that they've done for their predictions is verified, so it's accurate to reality. Any corrections that need to be applied to their predictions based on higher or lower noise or vibration measurements are accounted for. So yes, it is possible to measure and predict those levels, and it will be factored in. There'll be a feedback loop between what's done before the works start and then monitoring during the works to make sure that everything is, as best it can be, accurate to reality.
All right. And so just a follow-up to that. So the measurement, the tool that is used is quite accurate?
Yes, quite accurate, down to the fraction of a millimetre per
All right.
second. So if you're talking vibration, it'll be typically, I'm assuming, called a geophone, or essentially an instrument that measures vibration in millimetres per second. Generally, it's either buried in the ground or mounted to the side of a structure. And it can be read live, it could be uploaded to the cloud. I'm not exactly sure what process they will use at the time. But for anything that's deemed as high risk for vibration to structures or buried assets, this is speaking generally, not just about the breaking. If there's any risk to damage to any structures or assets, they'll be monitoring it closely to make sure that they don't cause any damage.
All right, so that leads me to my second question then. So with regards to the Hobart City Council stormwater infrastructure and other underground assets, that will be protected?
Absolutely.
And how will that be monitored?
I couldn't speak to exactly how it will be monitored. The framework's set up after some amendments to include requirements that each of the stage-specific construction noise and vibration management plans includes all of the criteria relevant to all of the affected buried asset owners. A lot of that information can be sourced from like a simple dial before you dig search, or in lieu of that, contact the relevant authority and they'll tell you, hey, don't jackhammer within 5 metres of this, or so anytime they're going to be potentially exceeding either safe working distances or specific vibration criteria, they'll liaise with the relevant authority and organise to do the works so that they don't cause damage to those assets.
I'll just add that there has already been quite extensive interaction with our stormwater unit.
Yep.
We're very mindful that Hobart Rivulet is potentially sensitive to vibration, so those discussions are already going on. The stage 3 specific plan is where that will be addressed in detail.
Okay.
And there is elements in the framework which already reflect that,
Yeah.
so that the consultants looking at the stage specific plans already have that information there for them. They may have to seek advice from the authorities to get data for, say, NBN Co or Telstra may need to provide information for theirs. It may be publicly available already. But the framework is set up to require them to look for that information and include it in their assessment.
Thank you. So just clarification with that. So at present, there is no monitoring or compliance procedures in that?
No. So the framework has different elements based on what was required from the order. For example, there's verification monitoring required, which I already mentioned. There is monthly monitoring that's required, complaint-based monitoring, which is required, and continuous monitoring, which is happening around the clock for noise and vibration. So there are quite robust processes for requirements for monitoring, and it has been undertaken.
And the last question, with regards to the contaminated aspect of level 2, for example, that's okay, that will go to microbials. And if there's level 3, for example, and it's airborne, how is that transported?
Councillor Dutto, I don't think we have the appropriate experts in the room to answer that question. This is specific to sound and vibration monitoring and compliance, not to soil management, excavation management.
Okay.
But perhaps the CEO might be able to address those questions offline if you'd like to email him.
Yeah, no, in the report, when I read it, it's mentioned there, hence I'm asking the question. In the report, contaminated level 2 is mentioned.
Okay, the issue that relates to though is the noise and vibration.
Yeah, that's okay.
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay.
Deputy Lord Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. So you mentioned that through the construction phase we don't have any compliance over the noise aspect of it. Can you just tell me why that is?
I'll just talk to that. So the order is set up. Schedule 8 talks to who it identifies the agency that has responsibility for compliance. And for lots of the issues, it's the City of Hobart, but for the construction management, it's all EPA.
And then you noted that that because we don't have any construction legislation here in Tassie, we're going to apply the New South Wales interim noise guidelines. Can you just tell me how that decision was arrived at?
That, I believe, would have been coming down from either MPDC or ACOM. It is what we do point to, at least from council's side, when we ask for a construction project to do a construction noise and vibration management plan, we point to the same legislation, which is the interim construction noise and vibration, interim construction noise guideline.
Yeah.
There are several other New South Wales legislations that sort of tie into it, but that's the primary one.
Okay, so have we ever used this?
Council, we have required, construction companies to develop noise and vibration management plans in line with that, yes.
In the past, like other
Yeah,
projects?
recently, within the
Yeah.
past few years.
And then for this particular project, what was the criteria of why we applied this?
I couldn't speak to why. You're not spoiled for choice. I've worked previously in Queensland and New South Wales. Queensland, the Department of Transport and Main Roads has a similar equivalent piece of legislation. I personally think the New South Wales is more robust. It's certainly more complicated, in a good way, I mean. Sorry, your question was of?
My question was the criteria of the why we decided, if there is a plethora of different guidelines, why did we choose this one? I suppose that being the first one, and secondly, what stems from that is, does that mean that those guidelines are applicable to like Sydney as a city, and then that noise vibration will be applied here in Hobart, and how does that work?
Only about construction noise and vibration.
Right.
We have been using this in lieu of our own state legislation. We've been using this for years.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you so much for that. I just don't understand the why.
Okay, it's mainly in lieu of having anything equivalent ourselves. All we have here is under the, I always get the acronym wrong. EMCA, yeah, under the EMCA regulations, there are limits to hours that you can do construction works. That's basically it. There's nothing else. So in lieu of that, they've opted for the New South Wales interim construction.
And there was other ones that you could have chosen from, but you
I'm only familiar with the Queensland and New South Wales ones. I presume WA has their own. It's been a while since I've looked at anything in Victoria, but there are at least 3 or 4.
If I can add some context to this.
Yes, please.
Thanks.
Sorry, my name is Johnny. I'm from ACOM, so I've sort of been assisting MPDC developing the framework that they mentioned. I think the decision coming down, it's from the order, like it's that sort of nominating all kind of criteria where we know that the project needs to use in terms of construction noise and vibration. I think the background of that is during the TPC hearing, Dr. Neil McKenzie from KBR provided expert evidence, which referenced the standard. I think he's also recommended guideline, recommendations what's best practice in the industry for that kind of construction noise vibration management, and has been adopted into the order. I think that's the main reason why we've used it. But in terms of personal experiences between other states, I've sort of done construction noise vibration management plans across other states except Queensland. I think what Aidan said is accurate, that the New South Wales guideline among other states are one of the most comprehensive, more detailed, guideline that's used to set up noise and vibration criteria. And it's a good tool to use to manage the risk from that aspect.
The order does reference it. It's under CM
Thanks, Johnny.
2.
Lovely, thanks very much, Johnny, I appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Before going on to Lord Mayor, just to clarify, is that legally enforceable, those standards from New South Wales?
Well, given that it is mentioned in the order, yes.
Yes.
That's part of the requirements they are required to comply with.
Yeah, but those standards in New South Wales and Queensland would be legislated for other projects and enforceable for other projects. That's how those standards work in New South Wales.
It is a guideline because it's mentioned in the guideline itself. The construction noise and vibration are one of the hardest things to predict and control. By its very nature, they vary significantly from day to day, which is why I believe it's a guideline rather than a different type of legislation. The way that noise, for example, is managed, it's categorised based on how far it exceeds the background noise levels. So without getting too far into the weeds, it's quite a broad instrument, and it provides a really extensive list, and the framework builds on it, of methods for controlling and mitigating noise and vibration that can be drawn from based on what the experience is on the ground.
Thank you. Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Would you mind just helping me through page 158, which is attachment D, and there's a diagram, a map, an aerial map with the noise catchment areas.
Yep, I'm familiar.
Do you mind just sort of demystifying that for me? There's
Sure.
NCA 54112, and up in Glebe they come under an NCA 06.
Yeah. So noise catchment area is essentially just a large area, let's say all of the residential receivers in this case, I believe, based on the background noise levels measured in the vicinity of those sites. They have a particular type of criteria which is referred to later in that same report. I believe it's 2 pages on Table 5, summary of measured background noise levels for noise catchment areas. So essentially it's just a way to categorise, in this area of Hobart, the background noise levels are this side of the Derwent, the levels are this, and the criteria is established based on what was measured at the time of the monitoring in those locations. So where a property doesn't have criteria based on its use, like a hospital or an education facility will have criteria based on its use rather than the environment. Residential receivers generally is based on the background noise levels.
So based on that, will everyone in an NCA hear this noise or be affected by it?
Depends on the noise, depends on where they are. It'll be different for all of them. Generally, best practice is to put a noise logger, which is what you use to measure noise, in an area that's representative of the amenity that you'd expect. So, noise catchment area 4.
6, for example.
6.
Yeah.
Where's 6?
Up in
Oh, yeah.
Glebe.
I believe the monitoring location for the glebe, it's covered elsewhere in the report. Sorry, 1 moment. I'm going to struggle to find this now. Here we go. The noise monitoring location was, it's in figure 2-1. That was, I believe, measured, I don't know what this side is. Do you know what this block is?
That is the
I can
university.
answer that. If,
Johnny might be able to reply better.
Johnny.
Yeah, it's on top of the things that you test nursing school, on the buildings right adjacent to the glebe, on top of the rooftop.
Okay. So is there a reason it's actually not in the area that's mapped?
I couldn't speak to why that, you know, I've worked on large construction projects. Sometimes it can be difficult to gain access to private property, but perhaps Johnny can speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, the main reason is access. It's, you know, it's sort of, it's hard to get into the residence, you know, and then it's also due to security of the noise monitoring equipment. What you're trying to find is a secure location that represents the background in the area. That's in sort of the closest location that we can find.
But surely the nursing school right on the Brooker Highway would be quite a different noise baseline than sort of suburban Glebe. It wouldn't really be representative, would it? Or?
It's right next to the first row of residents in the Glebe area that will be most highly impacted by the, you know, mostly affected by the project. So they sort of receive the same background from Brook Highway and they're sort of in the same environment.
So you've been on site, Johnny, to the...
Yes, I have, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd have to agree to disagree that they receive the same noise, but anyway. So those sites, all of those NCAs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they'll continue to be monitored by the EPA, like as we go through the project?
There's continuous monitoring going on at a number of sites that is addressed later in the report, towards the end, attachment 2. Those are, if I'm not mistaken, the long-term monitoring locations. They'd be monitored continuously.
So do they include 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6?
I couldn't tell you how they... So, for example, I don't believe that there is a continuous monitoring location on the other side of Derwent, but there are ones obviously closer to the site to monitor their emissions to make sure they're in line with what they predicted.
Could we get information on that? Because, I mean, I would have thought, I would hope that we would require that if it's in a baseline, we want to know the monitoring right through the project, because I presume these sites will be the sites for stages 3 and 4. So can't we as a council say that, well, if this is a noise, catchment area, and there's a baseline for it, let's get the baseline, let's monitor it at stage 1, let's monitor it at stage 2, let's monitor it at stage 3, let's monitor it at stage 4, and make sure we're across it and we're getting that data.
They have done baseline monitoring.
Yeah.
I have seen a map with the location of the noise monitors. I can't place my hands on it, Grace. I don't know whether you're able to, or Eve.
It's in the framework.
Yeah.
The back of the framework is...
Yeah, attachment 2, which is one of the final pages of the framework.
Yeah, I'm not going to look through that, but
Yeah.
can I just get the information about whether we can have a noise monitoring or a request noise monitoring at all locations?
At all of them. I don't believe it's currently scheduled to be done at all of them. I'd have to line them up and confirm which ones. But
I move that as an amendment, that we make that request. That we just have a noise monitoring, ongoing noise monitoring in all the noise catchment areas in the map.
We can move that as amended. If we can hold off on the moving and just go stick with questions, but if you can move that in a minute, then we can debate that and get some further advice. But let's just move on to questions for now.
I'm also interested. If I can indicate, the map of the noise monitors is on page 53 of the attachments.
Thank you, Director. Further questions, Lord Mayor?
So if someone can just let me know those, that'd be great. So the other area I'm interested in is noise catchment area 05, where there's quite a lot of residential properties. It's the Wapping area.
Yep.
So I presume there's some sort of ongoing monitoring equipment there.
yes, noise catchment area 5, I believe there is. Give me one sec. Look back here. Thank you. Yeah, so there is noise monitoring closer to the site, between noise catchment area 5 and the property, and the site, I should say. So there are a noise monitoring location right on the edge of the western side of the construction site, and another one over, I believe, at the, that's the TSO, is that right? Yeah, another one over at TSO. So they're sort of in between the construction and noise catchment area 5. So
not in noise catchment.
not in noise catchment area 5, no.
Alrighty. Can I just ask the MPDC consulting? I noticed there's a fairly restricted number of people that was in the parties that were in the order. I think it's in the report 39A to G. I'm just wondering, was there a reason that there isn't, for example, the tenants of Hunter Street generally?
That would be before my time with council. That would be part of the order.
Could we consider putting in a request that MPDC or their noise monitoring company consults a little bit more broad, or consults and provides the details to a broader range of parties, including basically anyone who's in a noise catchment area, maybe not the little individual residential, but I mean, I would have thought the tenants of Hunter Street, they're right there in ground zero, and they're not all the federal group, because there are some small businesses there as well.
I couldn't speak to specifics because I don't know too much about individual noise catchment areas, but the way the framework and the stage-specific plans are set up, there will be ongoing regular notification opportunities for consultation. If anyone has concerns, there is hotlines, email addresses that they can reach out to provide feedback or get support. When there's going to be particularly intensive works, the framework is set up for good communication with all the affected parties, so they have an opportunity to express any concerns they have. Make the principal and the contractor aware of anything that's affecting them.
Yeah.
That's in the framework, it's in the stage specific.
And so in the framework it specifically says that anyone inside any of those marked noise catchment areas will get a letter. Is that really clear?
I couldn't speak to specifics on which...
Could we make that a really specific request to the MPDC, just so that... Because if we don't know, it possibly won't happen. And we're the advocates, I think, for the people in these noise catchment areas, I would have thought.
Yeah, I know that the most affected people certainly will be. I don't know how far that bubble stretches out. So.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm just saying that as the council, I would expect that they're the kind of things that we might provide feedback on to MPDC.
Through your chair, perhaps if I can assist on there, we have made a recommendation for the motion to be passed by the elected members, but if you wanted to add something in, then that's
no worries. The other thing was just around the 7 days of operating 7 days a week. It says that there's no break, there's no Saturday or Sunday off at all. Did we consider maybe requesting Sunday off?
Perhaps if I can take that one, Chair, that the order specifically provides the hours of operation. So again, we could include that in the feedback, but given that the MPDC is entitled to operate on Sundays under the order, I suspect that that's...
Yeah, I appreciate it. We're not MPDC, we're a different organisation. If we think Sundays off is a reasonable request, I think they're the kind of things that we should put forward.
On that one, my first point of feedback in reviewing the framework is to point out for my full understanding of the order, the misalignment of our regulations and what was in that timeframe for the order. Yeah. And to make sure MPDC, principal contractor are aware that if they're going to get complaints about, say on a Saturday, the regulations say, off the top of my head, you could start as early as 9 or 10. The order says you can start as early as 8. So people are potentially going to complain about that as they grow used to it. Obviously, the order supersedes MCA, supersedes the regulations. So the allowed hours, standard and non-standard hours are from the order, so that MCA doesn't apply. But they are aware that if they're going to receive complaints, people are used to construction on a Saturday not starting before whatever it is, 9 or 10. So they'll receive complaints and they'll follow up on them and follow through the complaints handling procedures to chase those ones.
No worries. The other one was it related to the hours. Oh yes. So our arrangements around receiving the soil are only Monday to Friday. So if there's sort of demolition and loading up of trucks on Saturday and Sunday, will they just have to sit there, or?
Perhaps if I can take that one.
Yeah.
There is a separate construction traffic management plan, which we are separately having discussions with MPDC on. So we're still in the process of considering all of those issues.
So what does that look like? I mean, we've already said it's Monday to Friday, haven't we? So
In terms of the council as a corporation and operating Macrobies, I'm not privy to those discussions. I'm just speaking from the regulatory point of view.
So would that be advice though that we need to provide as part of this, that if they're doing construction, if they're doing demolition and loading up of trucks on Saturday and Sundays, and they're wanting to get rid of some of their 50,000 tonnes, they won't be able to access Macrobies on Saturday and Sunday?
So the framework document talks. The framework document talks to the Good Neighbourhood agreement that's in place that Hobart City Council have with South Hobart. So we're aware of restrictions on how that works.
So thank you. We might just be try and keep to the noise and vibration if we can.
I'll just clarify though.
CEO?
Just to
Yeah,
clarify,
I think it's relevant.
it is relevant in the sense that so there's multiple sites that the soil will be taken to. Macrobies Gully is just one. So if there's needing to be operations happen outside of our required hours of operation, then it would go to another site.
Thank you, CEO.
So final question is just around the hoardings that will be around the site, and whether we've got any requirements around that, and whether that will help at all with the sort of noise
So
attenuation.
what would be around the site?
Hoardings.
Hoardings.
Will they just be fences with sort of bits of?
That would depend on the actions that are being done on site at the time. What you're probably describing are those temporary construction fences. Sometimes you see ones that have like a lead line curtain hung from them. That's, you could potentially, depending on where you are, pick them up from Bunnings. Obviously, that would depend. Usually those types of mitigation measures are better when they are close to whatever noise source you're trying to attenuate. If you've got like let's say there's a generator on site, I'm not saying there is, but let's say there's a generator on site, it's a large diesel generator, quite loud. Generally, you try and set up shielding between the source and whatever neighbour you're trying to mitigate noise for, ideally as close to the source as possible. Putting construction barriers along the perimeter of a site, unless you're working there, it's not usually particularly effective. If you're doing piling right on the edge of the property line, perhaps that would be a good use of it, unless the neighbours are a two-storey building, But in the case of this one, it would depend on what's happening stage specific, and it's something that the contractor could consider. Should they be looking at issues of requiring noise mitigation?
So, in your opinion, it wouldn't make a massive difference
No,
for the Hunter Street, particularly for Hunter Street or the hotel or the art school. Would it make a big difference to have solid hoardings rather than just cyclone fencing or sort of specialised?
Generally, as close to the source is the most effective. As you move further away, the effectiveness drops right off because the noise spreads out. So unless you're right behind the barrier, which it's onto street frontages, unless either you're standing right behind the barrier or whatever noise you're trying to mitigate is on the other side, it's not the most effective mitigation measure. You try to put that stuff right close to which the framework and the management plans all speak to.
Thank you. Okay, any further questions? Alderman Bloomfield.
How long is this whole project? It's a number of weeks, isn't it, or months, correct?
I don't know the exact schedule.
Okay. It's just that if we start pushing things around and limit the operation, if we say remove a Sunday, then we could actually be extending the entire operation by a week or even longer, depending. And I think that's also a cost analysis that we should probably be fair about, and the fact that.
Alderman Bloomfield, I just might check if MPDC or ACOM can provide any further advice on the timeline of this particular phase. Yeah, come on up,
Just a
please.
ballpark. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't imagine you have an exact figure, but you know roughly.
Yeah, so for the stage 1 and 2 works, which is what these plans specifically relate to, they're the preparation works before we appoint the main stadium contractor and they begin the stage 3 works, at which point we'll come to you again with another plan. So these ones are due to go up until we have that contractor on board and they're ready to start works, which will be about mid next year. We need all the approvals in place before these works can start, so that's probably around 2 months away, something like that.
So this part of the project's what, 1 or 2 months?
No, so I think it will be a bit longer than that, just got a bit of maths in my head. I think that's like sort of 6 to 9 months. Sort of. 6 to 9 months. So 6 to 9 months, and if we pull out 1 day a week, so 1/7 and add that to the end, we could easily be adding an extra month of progress if we were to remove, say, a Sunday. I just think that's really material to whatever we decide, and I'm not saying that don't have Sundays or do have Sundays. I'm just highlighting that if we restrict hours of operation and we're not careful about it, we will actually significantly expend the length of time, which has additional costs and other issues. If we're going to make people uncomfortable, we're better off doing it quickly and getting it over and done with.
Thank you, Alderman. If that's all the questions we have, which I think it is, we might move on to the Lord Mayor's amendment. I'd invite you to move that now, Lord Mayor, if you wish.
Yeah, I guess it would be something like, well, I'd take your advice, but I guess it'd be something around the council requests that noise monitoring equipment be installed in all of the noise catchment areas, 1 to 6.
May I provide a little feedback? Generally, the reason you want to monitor close to the site with permanent equipment is because that's the equipment that you'll use to say if there's a really high noise or vibration event, you're right next to the source, it picks it up. You generally know, unless it's right next to the Brooker Highway and someone sounds their horn, that will be picked up. That might cause some alarms and trigger some investigation. But generally, the further you move away from the source, the less certainty you have of, you know, I get a noise level that's 10 decibels above the criteria. Was that associated with the construction? Was that a bird next to the equipment? The closer you are to the site, the more reliable the data is. The further you go away, for example, I wouldn't recommend permanent monitoring if I were the consultant in this case. I wouldn't be doing monitoring across the Derwent because the peaks I'm going to be getting won't be from the construction site. They at times may hear it, but the noise levels are going to be local. So generally, the monitoring they did in each of those places to get the baseline was there to inform the criteria, which is good. But once the works are undergoing, it's more effective to respond to complaints because then you know, okay, the noise is affecting this residence. We can do monitoring or observations from that residence during whatever activity is bothering them. Take some measurements, see if we need to explore mitigation. Having a permanent station there is not overly effective because the numbers you're getting, even if you're recording audio, it's just more noise, I guess.
Thank you. I think that's really helpful to have that additional information. Lord Mayor, I think you still wish to move that amendment for discussion.
I'm just so even sort of not NCA 5, which is, you know, as the crow flies, probably less than 100 metres from the site. But there's a lot of residential in there.
I think my reading of what's being said is that the further we move away, the less certain. I understand, but the less certain it becomes that it's stadium noise, and if you've got something measuring closer on the same trajectory,
His advice.
I understand, Lord Mayor, but we also don't want to go back and forwards. We don't have all night for this. So if you wish to move the amendment...
No, I was just asked a question that I'd like an answer to.
I think your question's been answered.
No, it hasn't. I just asked a question about NCA 05.
So there are 2 noise
close,
monitoring locations between the site and NCA 5 that would be more effective than monitoring at NCA 5 because you're sitting on the edge of, is that Macquarie Street, which has, I think, 25 to 30,000 vehicles a day with 10% heavy traffic. The noise you'd be picking up there is mostly traffic. It wouldn't be an effective measure for mitigation, for informing mitigation or complaint handling would be more effective, generally more effective than long-term monitoring there. The closer you get, generally, you can apply what you monitor at the boundary of the site to whether or not you're going to be meeting your noise limits.
That's perfect. Thank you. Councillor Harvey, then Councillor Coates.
I agree with what you're saying. I don't think we need an amendment. I don't think it's going to help. And I was just going to say, what's the average noise of an ambulance, which can frighten the Jesus out of you when it comes?
Pretty loud, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can pick those up from the Eastern Shore as well.
You'd certainly, Councillor Harvey, to answer your question, you will certainly hear our sirens used on the Brooker multiple times an hour.
Well, I live on Davey Street, and I hear it multiple times an hour.
Yeah.
And especially when they want to get through the lights and they flick it on.
Yep.
And everyone jumps.
Yep.
So I agree with you. Let's just work it through with complaints rather than putting monitoring stations where they're not going to be effective at all.
Councillor Coates.
Look, similar line reflecting, I think from memory when they were doing the hospital development, one of the things was the emergency helicopter coming in, where it can, and obviously on the way out, goes back out over the harbour, precisely for noise reasons. Obviously we all know how loud that can be, so having something in Hunter Street is probably useful to know how often a helicopter comes in, but that's
Yeah, Councillor Coates, I would also add there are 2 flight paths for the helicopter. One flies down essentially across the top of the Brooker, down the Brooker, and the other one comes in through the port.
Okay, can I
further.
ask about the Sundays?
Are we having the amendment or not?
I don't think there's support around the table
Okay.
for that, and it seems as though our advice is that we don't need ongoing monitoring in our noise catchment areas, but if that's the advice, the professional advice.
Yeah, that's mine. I believe what's set up in the framework, the permanent stations are going to be effective, and individual areas will best be responded to based on the other monitoring that they have available.
Thank you. On to Sundays, Lord Mayor?
Well, what's the advice on
So in
Sundays?
Tasmania, we do allow construction on Sundays and public holidays. The hours are different from what's in the order, as they are on Saturdays. We currently permit construction 7 days a week, I believe every day of the year, as long as, on Anzac Day it's not before 10 a.m, which does happen. People will probably be annoyed by construction on a Sunday before 10 a.m. I certainly think they would be. But, every hour you would to shave off this would add days to the schedule. The order is set up with standard hours, which have one set of, more, not relaxed, but, one set of noise criteria, and outside standard hours, which have much stricter noise criteria and much more intense control measures. So, before, I believe, 8 a.m. on a Saturday and Sunday would be outside standard hours, and then before 7 a.m. any day of the week would be a different outside standard hours. So a different criteria is applied for any sort of evening, night works, and early mornings on the weekends.
And that has to be separately approved by the EPA?
Yes, and that's got its own permit procedure, which I believe is part of the packet.
Perfect, thank you.
That we've reviewed as well.
Well, I'm happy to just propose around the table that we recommend that the Sunday hours start in line with our own requirements normally, which is after 10 a.m, is that right?
That would, from my recollection, I don't have the regulations with me. I believe it's after 10 a.m. on a Sunday or public holiday. However, I don't believe the order is up for the orders.
I know.
Yeah, thank you.
It's
so, Lord Mayor, would you like to move that?
Yeah, I will.
Okay, so we're moving an amendment for construction hours, a request that construction hours start at 10 a.m. on a Sunday and a public holiday, or just Sunday?
Yeah, and public holidays.
Sunday and a public
Including
holiday.
Anzac Day.
I'll open that for debate. I would ask elected members to consider what we have in front of us tonight, and if you need to speak to the amendment, but I will open it up for debate. Councillor Lohberger.
Just a question for the Lord Mayor, just to clarify, we're not looking at altering the end hours, just the beginning here at the 10 a.m.
That's the advice, it seems. But I'm not sure there is an end point. Is it 5 normally on a Sunday?
7 days a week, finishes at 6. Public holidays, the entire day is outside standard hours, period 1 or 2. Sundays and Saturdays, the hours are, it's in the order, yeah, it's written in the order. So 7 till 6 on working days, 8 till 6 on Saturdays and Sundays, and then public holidays are slightly different. necessarily outside standard hours.
Maybe 10 till 5.
Yeah.
Again, it's just
I don't
it's
believe
just a
5
request.
is even reflected in the Tassie legislation. I think it's still 6. I could be wrong on that though.
Excellent. Any further questions or debate? I think it's pretty clear what the amendment is.
Yeah, I've got a question.
Councillor Kelly?
So, are we wasting our time here because this is a government order? What are we doing here?
Enforceability.
Through you, Chair,
Yeah.
you are being consulted. There's no reason to not include requests that you think are appropriate. MPDC may or may not take that into account. Ultimately, the CMP will be approved by the EPA. So the EPA will understand what your suggestions are if you do choose to include them.
Councillor Dutton?
Thank you, Chair. No, I think, the points made are very clear. The order supersedes the regulations. That's a given. And if the organisation or the company will want to make that decision, they will abide by that. But for here, I think for our purposes as a council, we are simply requesting. And I don't think there's anything wrong in requesting. If we are consulted, this is the request we're putting forward. And then further on, if the neighbouring stakeholders are upset with it, then they have a complaint process they can follow as well. So at least from a council perspective, I think it's our position to put that as a request. And that's all it is.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey?
So from a standard operating construction process procedure, the times that you mentioned are standard across all construction? Everywhere?
From the regulations.
From the regulations?
Yes, so I don't have them in front of me.
So
but,
the hospital, the 8 o'clock till whatever on a Saturday and Sunday and public holiday thing, it's all standard?
Generally, yes,
Okay.
unless, I'm not sure if that's a state project. Or
Yeah, but
I'm not familiar with it.
well, the director knows it. We don't change the hours for any other project.
Well, through you, Chair, the hours are essentially established by the MCA noise regs. That's what they're entitled to operate under. There might be times, depending on the circumstances, where we suggest that noise is varied depending on the surrounding uses, but as a general proposition, the noise regs are what can be relied on by anyone. And
changing those regs for this project, how would that impact on future projects anywhere in Hobart? Would it establish a precedent that we can ask you to not, or is it just a request that we would offer and then get rejected in any other project? For example, some of the other major projects in Hobart, the project in North Hobart, for example, on the whole wind site, we asked them to start work later, finish early, we couldn't enforce it anyway.
Through you, Chair, I guess when we're starting to veer out of what is a legislative framework, yeah, we're edging into the pretty please territory as opposed to you must do this territory.
Well, I'm happy to stick with the regulations rather than move things around, which we can't regulate anyway, so I'm happy to stay with what we've got, so I won't be supporting an amendment to change the hours.
Thanks, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Kelly, and then I just want to add something. Councillor Kelly.
Look, I live in the subdivision for the last 5 years, and it's stock standard, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. to 6, Saturday 8 before 8 after 6. It's all laid out here. I mean, as Councillor Harvey said, what are we doing even thinking about having special little rules for some pet project or for some project that people don't like? It's embarrassing, it's not consistent, and we're making ourselves look like idiots. So I won't support this either.
Lord Mayor, if I could assist perhaps a little bit with the wording of the amendment. One thing that does concern me and is different on this project compared to other projects is the use of pneumatic hammer drills, of rock breaking equipment, which it's not common that we have ongoing months and months and months of rock breaking on any project in Hobart. But the request be worded as such that construction can commence at 8, but between the hours of 8 and 10 that we avoid, where possible, use of rock breaking equipment and very noisy heavy machinery. But if the boys are down there with a shovel, they can crack on. I apologise. Or the ladies are down there with a shovel.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I thought you were saying that these hours were unusual.
So I've just pulled them up because I don't have the regulations with me. We share them on our website as well. Monday to Friday, the regulations say 7 till 6 is acceptable. Saturdays, 8 till 6 is acceptable. And Sundays and public holidays, 10 till 6 is acceptable. So 6 p.m.'s standard every day of the year. And then it's just the starting hours shift from 7 till 8 on a Saturday and then from 8 till 10 on a Sunday. So we are essentially in lockstep on a Saturday, there's no difference. On a Sunday, we are starting 2 hours earlier than the regulations. The order has 2 hours earlier start than the regulations typically permit.
Yeah, I think it's just really important to be super clear that just in response to both Councillor Harvey and Councillor Kelly, that what we're proposing here is what's in the standard regulations for a 10 a.m. start on a Sunday. The order, which has been given to us by the Tasmanian Parliament for this project, has brought that back to 8 a.m. But the normal regulations for Tasmania are 10 a.m. on Sunday. So I would, think that our request is reasonable, that we're asking that it starts at 10 a.m. on a Sunday. So it's a very small request, and so it is in line with the current noise regulations.
Councillor Harvey?
Is that correct?
Yeah, just to be clarified.
If EBCAR and the order are two different.
Is it?
Yes, that's correct. Lord Mayor did mention 5 p.m, but you're reverting now to 6 p.m.
Yeah.
So it's in line with the standard Tasmanian noise regulations.
Alderman Bloomfield?
Just did the numbers on that. There's 2 extra hours will actually add a full week, I think, thereabouts, of additional works to this project if we just adjust by those 2 hours. So it is significant overall. And when we have a project of this size and the fact that we are looking at something that, what's the word? It's, people are watching us to see how we handle large investment and how we handle large projects. When we do these types of things and we tinker around the edges outside and extend the length of time required to do what would be ordinary anywhere else, I think that's a reputational risk, let alone the cost. So it's something that I think we need to be very sure that you want to do it before we actually agree to. So I wouldn't be supportive purely because I feel that this is something we've just got to get done, keep the costs down, keep the drama down. Extending anything at any point will be a problem overall. And I totally understand what you mean by rock breakers and so forth. I can remember rock breakers going right outside my office for about a week or so. I couldn't even answer the phone in that time in the rooms nearby. But it was over and it was done, and we were just grateful they just got the job done because I could just move on. The other thing to remember too, where this particular project is establishing, is nowhere near, for quite some way, housing. I mean, probably the closest is Wapping. I don't think there's any real housing otherwise than that part there.
Alderman Bloomfield, there is residential on Hunter Street directly opposite, or Evans Street, sorry, directly opposite.
Not significant though.
No, but there is.
Yeah. So my point is, it's not like we're talking about it being in the centre of, say, South Hobart or anywhere else where you've got people right on your edge. So I think it's also something just to kind of keep in mind that yes, it will be uncomfortable. It's a large project. There's a lot of work going on, but we need to allow them to do their job according to the standards, without being over regulated.
Councillor Kitsos, then Councillor Dutta.
Thank you. I'll keep it very brief. I just wanted to say that I think this is a really sensible amendment that needs to come through. It's a huge project. We've just heard that what we're talking about is 6 to 9 months of work. For me, an extra week on the end of that is not going to make a noticeable difference to the city. If it was 2 weeks of work and you're adding an extra week, fine. I would see that as a significant difference. I think the relief that it will bring the neighbours and the city to have a guarantee that that work won't start till 10 o'clock on a Sunday is worth putting the request through. I think we're all aware that it may not be something that is listened to on the other end, but it's our job to at least put that forward, and I'm really comforted by the fact that it lines up with what we're requesting everybody else to do. So in fact, we're not actually putting a pet project any worse off than anybody else. We're actually making sure that they're actually held to the same account as construction right across the city, and said, hang on a minute, you actually can't start till 10, it's going to cost you an extra week, but you're going to have far less complaints and far more support for your project in the long run. So I'm happy to support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Kitsos. Councillor Dutta, then Councillor Coates.
Thank you, Chair. Now, for me, it is very clear. It is not our role to make the decision, and we're not doing that. But the fact that under the terms of the order, we have to be consulted, and we are being consulted. In that process, in the consultation process, we're simply making a request, not making a decision, but simply making a request to say, our rule says this, can you please take that on board? They will then make the decision to say the duration of time, the cost is going to explode. No way, you guys go and jump. That's a different matter altogether. So I think that the clarity here, it is simply asking for a request, not making a decision. They will make the decision, taking all those arguments present. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dutta. Councillor Coates.
Yeah, look, just on the amendment, I definitely can't support. I am very comfortable, and we've heard the evidence tonight around all the measures being put in place to monitor noise and the avenues and the means by which those who are affected or potentially could be affected have the ability to raise it. I mean, we know as a council, and when people obviously come to us with complaints, this is a huge construction project. It's very large. It's not standard. The standard regulations and rules were never designed with a Macquarie Point development in line. That's the default catch-all thing. This project, to the extent that you try and chop off hours of days here, there and everywhere across a 9-month project, all you're doing is just extending it out. The reality is construction has noise. I'm very comfortable with what's in front of us in terms of how that's going to be monitored and the avenues for which, if there are issues. What I'm not comfortable about is us just arbitrarily deciding we're going to tinker around the edges, and all we're doing is then moving it. We're just going to say, well, rather than having it on week 3 on a Sunday at 10 in the morning, it's now going to be in week 41. I'm very confident that if there are issues around construction noise, we've got the means in place and we've got the monitoring. It's clearly going to happen. So, look, I just cannot support this. And the other thing I'd say is around the different types of activity and work. I mean, there's a major site. There's going to be a huge amount of wet lease happening where they get equipment in, where it's there. We've got the work crews and whatever. It's a commercial build that has to happen, 7 days a week, and the benefits to the city are in actually getting it done quickly and having it over and done with, and the benefit for the residents. And so, look, I just cannot support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Coates. Councillor Lohberger.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be quick as well. This council spent decades encouraging housing in Wapping and the surrounding area, and we've been quite successful. There's a significant amount of housing there now. There's 2 major hotels directly across the road from this site, which have people staying in them. There's significant housing all around those hotels. The hospital's not that far away. And I see no problem in setting the rules for this project the same as everybody else in the community has to face. I think the current arrangement is a special rule for them that will potentially prevent all these nearby people from ever having a peaceful Sunday morning for what is it, 9 months. I can support this amendment because I think it's just evening up the playing field.
Thank you, Councillor Lohberger. We might put that amendment and
Can I just hear that one more time? It's just.
I'm going to read it out for you, Councillor Harvey. So the amendment requests that construction activities do not take place on Sundays and public holidays, including Anzac Day, until after 10 a.m. in line with the standard regulations. That's a request. So I'll put that motion from the amendment from the Lord Mayor now. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Okay, we'll have a show of hands. All those in favour, please. Deputy Lord Mayor, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Lohberger, Councillor Kitsos, Councillor Dutta, the Lord Mayor and Councillor Posselt. Against? Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Coates, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Elliott. The motion or that amendment is carried. And I might have a substantive, if everyone's happy, I think we've spent an hour on this and covered it quite in depth. Councillor Dutta?
Yeah, with regards to the recommendation,
yeah.
I haven't spoken to that yet. So
I understand.
Yeah.
I'm just cognizant that we've spent an hour on this. We've got a lot to get through and we've heard everyone's concerns. So if you have something to say, please do keep it to new information. Councillor Dutta, go ahead.
yes, it is absolutely new information.
Yep, go ahead.
Point number 4. In point number 1, it says the council notes. Point number 2, council notes. Point number 3, council notes. And in point number 4, it says it endorses the position. I would suggest that we maintain the note. We note the position of the officers instead of endorsing it.
Thank you, Councillor Dutta. I would actually suggest that point 4 is no longer valid because there is an amendment that's been carried. So we will vote on points 1 to 3,
Yep.
and 4 will be removed. Or we can vote against it, but it's contrary to what we've just done. So are you happy for that to be removed?
Yep, that's fine.
Yep, does that still work for you, Director? Yes, okay, so we'll remove point 4, thank you for raising that, Councillor Dutta, and we'll vote on items 1 to 3, plus the amendment from the Lord Mayor that is now included. Is everybody clear? Yes, does anyone have any new information they want to add or new questions? Very good. So we are moving, can I have somebody to move that, please? Councillor Harvey. All those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Director. Thank you for your time. And thank you, Johnny. Thanks, MPDC, for coming along.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Let's move on to 7.2. We'll just give everybody a moment to clear the room. Who's heading out? If any of the staff or visitors want to move forward, feel free to. On to 7.2, Economic Development Partnerships.
Excellent.
Hello, Ben.
Hello, thank you.
Welcome, Director Artup. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This item here is seeking the committee's endorsement for 2 new economic development partnerships. So I'll take the report as read, but the 2 partnerships in question are the Beacon Foundation, so $10,000 to support another year of the work that we've been doing with the Beacon Foundation for the first time last year. And the second economic development partnership is funding for the Palawa Business Hub event, which we haven't supported before, which has been conducted for 2 previous years. And this year will be held at the end of October in PW1. So both events and the request for funding will come out of the existing economic development budget, but it's seeking the approval for Council to enter into these new partnerships with these two events over the next 12 months.
Thank you, Director. That's fantastic. And I might just ask you briefly, is this good value? Is there anything you want, any of your opinion as a Director that you'd like to inform the table about?
Yep, a bit of background. The Beacon work that we supported last year, that program for the funding that we put into the same amount last year supported 138 students across 2 high schools, and it also brought in over 40 local volunteers or businesses that engage with with the kids, predominantly around that year 9 cohort, to get experiences and understanding of what work might be like, to meet employers, to get the inspiration and understanding of how to make career choices. So the impact report that's attached to the report shows a lot of those impacts that are quite beneficial for young people when they're looking for careers. And the Palawa Business Hub proposal, which we have supported before through in-kind, strongly aligns with our country culture people work and the commitment to cultural safety across the city. So again, both of these proposals present good value for money in terms of the council's investment.
Thanks for your perspectives, Director. Alderman Bloomfield, I know that you're the Chair of City Economy and also been involved in the Beacon Foundation. I might just wanted to open and offer you an opportunity to speak first if you wish.
Oh, thank you. This was a project that was very important to me when it came through, because I know it didn't kind of come through Chamber, it came through City Economy. And effectively this was all about maintaining engagement of young people so that they stayed at school and went through to work. And I was just looking at the numbers because we've not really had a formal outcome of this particular investment prior, so basically 3.11 and actually starts to kind of give you a bit of an understanding of the value of what actually this did. I noticed we don't actually have numbers here to say how many kids actually maintained in their tuition or how many maintained to go through to careers, but certainly the information here was quite positive. And my understanding too was that a program like this requires around about 4 years, I believe, to create the cultural established change to really see a difference on the streets and a difference overall for our youth. Because part of what we want to develop is a more, more supportive environment as a council for the young people, not just things through Youth Arc, but also making sure that they actually progress through life the best way possible. So that's for the fact it's $10,000 a year and that it does so much with that money is really quite profound. When you compare the fact that this is a yearly a project that goes for that whole time versus the Palawa project, which I think is a single event and it's the same cost, shows you just how valuable this particular one is and how much it delivers for what it is. I wish I'd actually had more to do with the Palawa investment, to be honest. I do remember reading about it in socials, and I'd love to know a little bit more actually about what we could learn a bit more about the outcome of the last event for the Palawa people. I know that it's part of our project and expectations. It would be nice to know what outcomes happened last year with this one.
Yeah, thanks. Do we have any outcomes from the last program? It was a while ago. Wasn't last financial year?
It was.
Oh, it was?
I haven't got an outcome report from last year, so we weren't cash contributors or major contributors.
Yeah.
So I haven't got an attached outcomes, but we can take that on notice.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm sure that if any elected members want to know more, they can set up a meeting with Director Artap. He'd be more than happy to have you in his office. Councillor Loberger.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I just wanted to say quickly that I think this is us being responsible sort of caretakers here. We've made a decision not to make any major funding decisions, and there's been a couple of little loose ends created. This is one of them, and the next item is the other. So this comment goes for the next one. I'll be voting for this because this is us being a responsible group, doing what we need to do to tidy up those loose ends and giving the next council the decision-making power over the bigger decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Loberger. Okay, thank you for your contributions. If I can have somebody, Alderman Bloomfield, would you like to move this one? Yep, moved by Alderman Bloomfield. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Director, and I think you're sticking around for the next one. All right, so we'll just open to 7.3, Civic and City Partnerships, 1 year extension. Give us a quick background, please.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. So again, tying up some loose ends here, you might recall that we did a workshop recently on our grant funding program, where we were suggesting and talking about a series of potential changes to our grant funding program. The decision was taken after that workshop several weeks ago to defer a lot of those bigger decisions to the new council. So what that meant was we had some existing city and civic partnerships that we had previously agreed to continue, subject to further refinement. So this report's got some of those, 5 of those civic and civic partnerships to be extended for 1 further year until some more of that policy work can be done with the new council to work out what we do with some of them, whether they move into different types of grant categories and buckets. But this report here proposes 1 year extensions to the Greek and the Italian Festival, the 2 regattas, the Anzac Day commemorations, and the Hobart City of Stedford. So the figures are there, but it's seeking the extension for those events, Chair.
Primarily to get us through to a phase where officers can do a better assessment and the next council can make a
Correct.
decision. Very good. Any questions, Councillor Coates? Or contributions? Go for it.
I was going to say 1.4, backing up your comments. I'm quite pleased to see that, and yeah, I don't have any issue with it.
Very good, thank you, Councillor. Lord Mayor.
Just a very quick comment that I think the disparity between different sort of multicultural groups is something that possibly I first raised about 2018, because a lot of multicultural groups come to a lot of us and say, why is it that 2 groups, get a guaranteed amount and we've got, a bigger diaspora group, or, our event is attracting more people, or we don't have our own property to base a festival around, so we don't have the same resources as those other communities. And somehow, I don't know what's happened, but, it's taken 8 years and we're still in the same position we were 8 years ago, so it does feel a little bit frustrating, but I do hope that, the next council finally, wrestles this one and we get some sort of, major cultural festivals program that, includes Christmas, includes Diwali, includes Lunar New Year, it includes, those big, I think Festival Italia is on Italian Independence Day, I think. I'm not sure what it actually celebrates, but yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
So
Excellent. Thanks for your contribution. Did you want to respond at all, Jack?
So we've certainly taken on board the feedback around greater funding for cultural organisations or smaller cultural groups and some of their events that they have across our community as part of the broader work we're doing around inclusivity. So when we come back in the new council, I think there'll be some recommendations that make some changes, tweaks and suggestions to the funding policy that greater support our cultural communities more broadly.
Very good. I saw hands down here. Alderman Bloomfield.
Yeah, just a question. The Festa Italia and Greek Festival, they're not until, what, February, March next year, is that correct? I think it's about then that they're in. Oh, yeah. So I'm just kind of querying, because this has been going on, and frankly, I was the one who bore the brunt of the Chinese New Year festival funding issue. Where I got very distraught people approaching me because they received absolutely nothing at all from council, and they put an application in, I think, for 30 at the time. I'm not sure about all the details of timing and so forth, but they didn't have a lot of time left to find alternative funding when they discovered they weren't even going to get a fraction of any of the 30 that they'd asked for. They were quite concerned, again, that they had to constantly ask for any funding at all for any of their functions. They were keenly aware of these two, and I think the only reason that the Chinese New Year went ahead on the Parliament lawns was because the state government had a multicultural minister for the first time, and they actually had a little bit of money and they were able to get a fraction of the 30,000. That's the only reason that function went ahead. They are now considering only having it biannually because they simply cannot afford it. Now, I don't want to make a judgment on which one is more important or which cultural festival should be included and which one should not be, but I do question that if we're simply, how do I put it, no one is saying that they won't get money, but we are suggesting that these people don't need to ask what everyone else has to. I would question why it is that these two organisations in particular don't need to ask. Surely they would be in a position they could at least put forward a proposition like all the other organisations, in a timely fashion to negotiate just like everybody else does. I just find it difficult to explain to all the other cultural organisations, effectively other cultures, that they don't have the same treatment.
Thank you, Alderman Bloomfield. I think that the impression that I've got from the Director is that that's going to be worked through over the next 12 months, and this is just to tie us through, but to work on the lunar New Year and Diwali. Is that correct?
Yeah, the work we'll do will certainly look at encouraging those types of community events and supporting them more fully. We have been able to, since the last workshop, look at the event partnership program, which is not subject to tonight, and make some small changes in the guidelines that will make it easy for some of those organisations to apply sooner rather than later, but more work's to come.
Yeah, but you've certainly reinforced the Lord Mayor's point as well, so thank you for doing that.
The point I'd like to make, though, is that when we all first got elected, I can clearly remember sitting down, and Jackie Allen was the director at that moment, and she made a really big song and dance about addressing this, and 4 years later we haven't done it.
Yeah, I think the Lord Mayor raised it in 2018 as well. So I'm sure officers have heard, and we'll get some more information to the new council, I'm sure. Deputy Lord Mayor and then Councillor
Yeah,
Coates.
look, I'm just going to be brief and just reiterate that point. I remember in 2018 or 2020 again, it was raised as well, and so it's good to see that it's finally been addressed.
Thanks, Deputy. Councillor Coates.
Oh, look, obviously pleasing to hear the comments about working with the new council on this and how to do it going forward, but in terms of the recommendation in front of us, just touching on the point that Alderman Bloomfield raised, but I'm very comfortable the recommendation includes wording that this is only subject to these organisations completing their acquittal for the grant allocated in 25-26. So this idea that these groups don't have to ask and don't have to report is something we need to be careful of in terms of messaging the community. As I understand it, there are established processes where if you receive a grant from the City of Hobart, you have to actually provide reporting and provide information back. The recommendation that's in front of me, which we're about to vote on, specifically references that this next round of funding is subject to the acquittal of the previous one. So I'm very comfortable. For what it's worth, I wish there was more like STU and Festa Italia, because I think they do great jobs and are well supported and beloved by the community. but obviously keeping in mind there's only so much we can do for so many groups, and we need to have those good governance process and acquittal procedures, which I'm comfortable in this case there is.
Thanks for highlighting that little detail, Councillor Coates, it's important. If there's nothing further, we might vote on that. If I can have somebody move the motion, please. Thank you, Deputy. All those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Director Artup. I invite, I think, Director Reeves up next. So we're going to move into the workshop component of the meeting. Thanks for the decision making that has been a little bit complex tonight, actually, for a workshop. So just a reminder that this is not a decision making forum and it is for workshopping. We're going to open with 8.1 strategic asset management. You got anybody joining you?
I have actually, and I'll do some introductions.
Excellent. We'll get an introduction from a guest, and we'll crack on with the workshop. Mindful that it is 5:30, so we're halfway through, folks.
So just very briefly, before we start, so as a council, we've been working on strategic asset management for quite a while. So over the last year or so since I've been here, we've done a fair bit in that space. So it's involved a lot of different areas of council. So it's not just about our strategic asset management plan, but it's all the bits and pieces that go to make up that, to make it a robust plan. I know it's something that council has yet not had visibility over. So tonight's that, I guess, that opportunity to actually put that visibility before the elected members. Asho on my left here is well known in all the asset management circles, so he's worked across Australia and across North America in particular, worked with thousands of councils, so he's seen every scenario you can imagine.
Thousands of councils.
Thousands of councils when you include North America as well, Bill.
Not thousands.
Yeah, not just
yet.
Hundreds.
Could you list
Thank you, Councillor. Director.
So it's an opportunity for Asho just to talk a little bit about some of the work he's been doing with us, but also a little bit at that higher level about asset management as well for elected members. He will make it interesting for you, I promise you that. With your indulgence, Chair, to make it work the best, it's good if it's a little bit interactive as we go through, so feel free to get any clarification as you go through.
Thanks. Just grab my attention if you want to make a contribution or clarify anything along the way, team. All right, over to you.
Thank you. And yeah, look, we would strongly encourage interaction Q&A as we go through. So this is not a masterclass in strategic asset management, but I might just spend a couple of minutes on if anyone around the table, I haven't addressed this council before, but from a strategic asset management perspective, what would be the first thing that comes to your mind if you hear that term?
Anyone
To set
want
the
to
scene.
jump in there. Councillor Elliott?
Maintenance.
Maintenance? Yeah.
Councillor Kelly, any suggestions?
Sorry, I can't see everyone, but yeah. Strategic asset management.
Yeah, it's more, everything we've got that's an asset, obviously.
Not wrong.
The words say it all, really, right?
Strategic assets.
You know, strategic,
It's
getting it
everything,
right,
all
getting on the calendar, timing it right, prioritising it.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, all of that.
Councillor Donna, do you want to have a crack?
Yeah, sure. My layman's understanding is that we have all these assets. So how can we strategically manage this? And like, for example, the word strategic has different definitions. And for me, for example, with the elections, we've got to be strategic as to how and where, which position to stand for, etc. So in the same way, I think we need to plan with regards to the assets we have and how we're going to manage the assets we have.
Yep, brilliant. That's what ChatGPT would have said.
There we go, we've got a pretty good summary. All right, back to...
In a nice way, yeah.
That's perfect. Back to you, let's carry on.
Anyone else?
Anyone else want to have a go?
But look, I think, sorry. Yeah? No. Fundamentally, Councillor, spot on. It is about strategically managing and prioritising. And it comes down to what is it that we're trying to manage. And I'll give you a definition of strategic asset management from 1986, when it was really simple.
Good, yeah.
It was basically, it said, it is the methodology to manage infrastructure into the future at the least potential cost. And that was the era of economic rationalism, but we can see here on the screen that definition has now got kind of unbounded in terms of we're not just managing infrastructure from a cost perspective, but now we've got to overlay climate, gender impact, because the same football oval or that pavilion has now got to cater for newer and more modern demographics than we had 30 years ago. And that's been a fundamental shift, because major cities like this one, we're not replacing infrastructure like for like. And I know it is a hot topic, but the definition of a swimming pool or a leisure centre is very different to what it was in the 80s. And the libraries now are no longer about books. It's about social cohesion and getting people congregating as a second home in many cases for a lot of communities in the rural areas. So when that happens, that definition of economic cost rationalization has significantly shifted. And for a city like this, with changing demographics and changing climate considerations, and the fact that assets are aging, puts us into a context of how do I continue to deliver service levels into the future at the lowest possible cost. So, and service levels encompass everything that you see on the screen there. And your strategic asset management plan looks at that from a holistic perspective. So here are some fundamental terms when David, Claire, Dan and the team get to publish the strategic asset management plan, these terms become important. So whether it's a pipe or a road or an oval or a footpath or a building, infrastructure assets will degrade over time, and I don't like to use the word degrade, but they will go through a phase of a capacity and functional deficiency over a period of time, just like a human being. And over a period of time, that service capacity will start to erode. And why? Not just the age, wear and tear, not just the wear and tear,
Changing expectations.
Changing expectations, bingo. Changing expectations around the fact that demographics are putting a pressure on a footpath or a pavilion that was a green or a black is no longer so, not because it's old, but because it doesn't meet the standards that we want to deliver. And eventually hits what is called the point of inflection. And that point of inflection is when that rate of consumption starts to exponentially get greater and greater. So the time span between a yellow to a red in modern demographic change is significantly shorter than a time span between a yellow to an orange or a light orange. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And you have, guess how many assets the City of Hobart has?
3 billion.
Number.
3 billion.
No, number of assets.
No.
583.
How many have we got?
I think you've got close to about 35,000, correct me if I'm wrong.
That was my next guess.
Yeah. But that's all your pipes, your components in your facilities like this one, complex one, your roads, your footpaths, etc. And the pressure it puts is in a pristine city like this one is, do we intervene earlier because our customers are expecting a significantly higher service level because we don't want our assets falling into this phase, or we let some assets slide and intervene when they're close to failure because we have either no choice from a funding perspective or they are not deemed as high priority or high criticality. And I'm using those terms quite intentionally because they will feature in your strategic asset management plan. So that's the simplest definition of the life cycle of the asset, where council will fund capital to intervene and perhaps even upgrade because the facility no longer meets the current needs or the future needs and requires an expansion, or the swimming pool requires a splash pool, or the footpath has to be converted into a dual path.
But would that also be the proximity of the dots to each other as well, the urgency?
Urgency as in?
Well, when it's going to fail.
Oh, yeah. If it's a high, absolutely. So the modelling that Claire and Dan do would say that yes, if an asset's come to here and it happens to be really high priority, bang, it's got to be the first one because its proximity to the next phase is quite short. Absolutely, that comes into the picture. But what keeps the asset on that path, just like a human being, is the salt and pepper maintenance. And these squiggly lines are the pothole patching, the painting in the buildings, the servicing of the equipment. You don't have any gravel roads, thank God, but grading the gravel roads.
A couple. We've got a couple.
Or patching footpaths, yeah. Or cleaning gutters in buildings. That maintenance keeps the asset on its path. And what you see here is the annual maintenance funding relative to the capital funding. But that annual maintenance funding exponentially increases as the asset wears out. Old car, old HVAC, old equipment, old footpath, old road, significantly lots in maintenance. So this is what your depots do day in, day out, our depots across the country, is salt and pepper maintenance to keep the asset on its path. But if the maintenance doesn't get funded, then it's very likely that time span will further deteriorate and the crunch will start to come. Sorry, question?
I was just going to say, this is also very much guided by risk appetite as well.
It is.
So if we're very risk prone, we'll just let that go all the way down.
You wouldn't.
We're not, but if we're risk prone, like we don't care, risk is fine. If we are risk averse, we'd be hitting it kind of round the yellow, for instance, and start doing the more significant maintenance.
Yeah. So the important thing here is this point is not end of life, which is I can't drive on that road, or I can't use that building, I've got to shut that bridge down and put a load limit. We're not at that point. It is still above that point. But from a risk perspective, it is absolutely spot on that City might choose and say we'll intervene significantly earlier on at least the high priority assets and maybe later on the low priority assets. That's a choice. But guess what the impact is? The more and more we intervene with capital above that line.
What, the higher the maintenance costs?
No.
The less we're going to spend on other things.
Less you're spending on other things, and that's the tension.
Yeah.
And to keep a good asset in good, constantly doing that is going to cost a lot of money over the life cycle. Significant amount of capital injection. So you've got to find that balance to say, where do I keep the balance between the 35,000 assets to keep within my budget so I can still be doing the other things that we may want to be doing.
But doesn't every asset have its maintenance program, its depreciation, working towards when it's going to be replaced?
Yeah. So it does have a maintenance schedule, it does have depreciation, but what we've got to do from an asset management perspective, because depreciation is just a flat line over the life, from an asset management perspective, we've got to say how many assets have we got in this bottom phase here, which has nothing to do with depreciation. And if they increase in quantum as time passes, our backlog is starting to give us grief. Depreciation won't give you that, because it'll give you a flat line to say over 50 years, 100 years, on an average you should be spending about 20 million a year, or 25 million a year. Okay? Does that make sense? So hypothetically, imagine if you're a council that's got 25 million depreciation, somebody else also has a 25 million depreciation, hypothetically. Exactly the same. But because your engineers and planners have taken care of the assets, you might only have $15 million worth of assets in that really poor zone. That council may have 40 million because they keep sliding, it's not being maintained. But the depreciation is exactly the same because it's 5 billion divided by 50 years.
But I guess that one of the tensions again is that if, because of the change in expectation of the customer, that if you maintain to a very high standard, but you don't have, toilets that meet modern gender standards, or the skate park doesn't meet modern expectations, that you've spent all this money maintaining a facility that you get to a point where you need to replace it anyway, because it becomes an expectation problem rather than an asset condition problem.
Basically, you replace this colour with this red to say it's already reached a red, so it's no longer functional. It's not in poor physical state, but it's not functional. And that's the classic dilemma. So some terms very quickly, in any SAM, internationally, the common terms now are what proportion of infrastructure do I have in poor and very poor state? If there was one number that as elected members we want to get out of bed really worried about, it's that one there. Yes, depreciation is important, but what proportion of my infrastructure is in poor and very poor state? That is an absolutely critical number. Portfolio health. What's the average health or the average remaining life of all my buildings? Or what's the average remaining life of all my roads? Critical number. As an elected member, I really care about that number because that helps me compare where I am on the life cycle and how much of an effort we need to put in financially to keep it above that level. Intervention level and criticality is what you saw on the previous screen, which is essentially saying at what point will we intervene depending on the criticality of the asset. Do we intervene early because our risk appetite is very low? Do we leave it until it gets to a point of ultimate imminent failure? Or do we mix and match to say high priority assets up there, lower priority we can let slide? Choice. Yeah, please.
We've also got an issue too in the fact that in order to identify portfolio health, you're going to rely heavily on audit results, as in when's the last time a property was valued, as an evaluation according to condition. And I know that our audit process is cyclical, and in some instances, especially in recent years, there was a different definition made through, and everything had to change as a result, which meant that all our values changed. So I think it's something that you need to know, but understand there'll be significant limitations to knowing exactly how accurate your
100%.
is.
100%. So, and the assets team can correct me if I say anything wrong, but the City of Hobart has moved towards a nationally published asset management guideline. So with your transport infrastructure, which is nearly 70% of your portfolio value, the actual condition assessments are based on that national framework, collected by an electronic vehicle, and is really good practice data. Facilities absolutely appreciate that there is work to be done on appropriate condition and functionality data that can measure that health. But that's a moving target in terms of maturity and ability to be able to collect that. For example, when City of Hobart does roads, and these are not your roads, by the way, this is just an example.
No, yeah, it could be. Yeah.
That's the type of distress or health factor, like blood pressure, cholesterol, heartbeat, that would be used to measure the physical capacity of the road. To assess functionality, you would look at, is it wide enough, does it have pavement of the right structure because it's carrying certain traffic, etc. Make sense? So those pathways are readily available in terms of making the assessment consistent. If you look at bridges, typically engineers would look at rotting, is there infestation, cracking, spalling, that type of stuff to indicate wear and tear. And when it comes to functionality and capacity, you would look at load limit or the number of lanes on the bridge in terms of assessing the capacity of the bridge. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So yes, absolutely. But combining those three factors allows any city in the world to make decisions, just like on that life cycle. Okay? So if health is poor, but functionality and capacity are reasonably okay, and it's a high utilization asset, we would prioritize it for like renewal in the next 3 years. Just an example. really simple decision logic, but this is typically what engineers do when they're developing a forward budget. I'm not teaching people how to suck eggs, but this is just what will be in the sample. But you consider rationalization or upgrade where functionality and capacity starts to really become red. That's where the fitness for purpose kicks in. We don't really care what the health is. The health might even be fairly okay, but the functionality and capacity is now putting pressure. But more expensive, requires an upgrade, potentially even rationalization, which means let's divest out of that asset and relocate that service to a different entity and or a different infrastructure. And that's a hot topic in local government at the moment as well, is how do we rationalize and what data do we use to make those decisions.
So that would include like higher and stronger or fatter or thicker or wider or whatever it is to accommodate what's coming over the horizon.
Correct. Correct. Example would be to upgrade an existing stormwater pipe to a more modern equivalent.
Well, why equivalent? Why not better capacity for future events?
Modern upgrade, yeah. Future upgrade, yeah. Absolutely. Or another example might be to widen a bridge or provide a dual carriageway for both pedestrians and cyclists. So here is an example. This is a picture I took on my mobile phone when the battery was 61%. But if you read the term portfolio health or asset health, that's what it actually means. How much juice is left in the battery, and at what point do I start to get nervous? So who in the room has got their phones at about 10% at the moment? Yeah. And does that worry you?
Not really.
Not really. See, that's the appetite for risk. And there would be some elected members who would say, no, we will not accept anything below 75 or 80%. And as soon as that happens, you plug it in. Okay? But that's about dilemma and choices around where do we set our standard in terms of expectation. What do you think the national average, this is a trivia question, national average of Australian public sector, 457 councils, all underground assets and above ground assets combined, what do you think is the average health? 20%?
20. Anyone else jump in? Go. Don't be shy.
40.
40?
40?
I'm going to split the difference, say 30.
30% life left. Come on. You're more optimistic than that.
We have plumbing that's 1890.
Yeah, we do. We've got a few negatives actually, so I think it's as low as the average. Yeah.
That number is actually the national average.
Oh wow.
It's 61%. And again, it's based on data that's been provided by local governments nationally, and there is a little bit of question mark around, is it really accurate? Do we know the condition of our pipes, for example? Do we know the functionality of all our buildings? So it's kind of an average, 61%. Guess what the number is for the US?
12.
40%. So it tells you the state of the infrastructure, and 60% by the way is a good number because we're still on majority of our infrastructure is still above the light yellow. So that's not a terrible outcome. The question then becomes what percentage is at the bottom in the poor and very poor state. This is yours based on the most appropriate available data. And as time passes over the next 3 or 4 years, I'm pretty sure data will be updated and more and better informed. But you can see here there are some reds. Predominantly in the major infrastructure, it is kind of green, and there's nothing wrong with having a red or an orange. It just brings the score relatively down.
Does anyone want to interrogate this and ask any questions? It's a pretty interesting graph. Maybe just leave it on there for a sec while we digest it.
Sure.
I mean, personally, I find that the stormwater thing that we've been talking about this whole term, and I'm sure before that, is sitting too low for my comfort. But obviously car parking and security infrastructure is a major outlier for the city.
What does that mean? Car parking and security infrastructure? What's the security infrastructure? Like we have good padlocks?
That'll be all your parking, parking sensors, probably on street stuff and so forth. So your car parks is a separate one, but that'll be all your parking infrastructure on the streets. I'd imagine that one.
Is that a reflection of our parking meters?
It could be a reflection of that, a little bit about that, but it'll also be about some other things that sits in the security infrastructure, which I'm not sure actually what that part is, but certainly the car parking bit would be.
It's a small
Just had a clarification, CCTV. Yep. CCTV for security infrastructure.
Okay.
But we
Spend a lot of money on that.
Yeah. Well, there we go.
So just to clarify here, this
Yeah, life's
50%,
probably pretty short.
anything above is getting into the good zone.
Yes, like your mobile phone battery.
Yeah, okay. So is there an industry standard of what an acceptable percentage is?
No, and there never will be.
Right. And can that vary from council to council?
Correct, it does. The average is about 60% nationally, but it's really the people in the room here that need to set the standard to say, what is it that I'm willing to accept because of what my community is also willing to pay for. So 60% is not a bad score, because 60% means I've got majority of my infrastructure in good, very good and fair, but there is some that is slipped into the poor and very poor, but I can cope with that because you will always have stuff that slips into the poor and very poor by the very nature of the fact that assets will run out of capacity over a period of time.
And so, some of these would be influenced, like bridges in particular, I note up there, that's influenced by that road to recovery funding, and I mean the feds fund a lot of bridges as far as I'm aware. So some of the way those funding is allocated is leading to why we've got these sorts of numbers.
High numbers?
Well, high or low, but the influence, it's not solely the council that can control, you know, bridge funding in particular.
Bridges are pretty long-lived assets to start off with, and we don't have any timber bridges, I believe, which is always a problem, I think, in council areas there. So because of that, even though we've got some very old bridges, yes, we have got some funding from the feds for a couple of bridges in recent times there, but they're usually in pretty good shape. And if you go to other councils, that figure's probably fairly similar. You'll see that up at a higher level for bridges generally.
Very good. All right. Onwards, any further from this screen? Yeah, onwards, let's go.
And again, this is not your example, but this is an example of how the spread typically looks like for a comparable city. There'll be red, yellows and greens everywhere, but in this particular one, they focus on the townships more than anything else, so you see a lot of greens around the high priority areas. That's just an example.
That is us, isn't it?
No.
It's Kingborough, isn't it?
Huh?
Is that Kingborough?
Yeah.
Like Reading Island and Kingston?
It is.
Yeah. Huon Valley?
Yeah. It's just an example. So yes, so basically the black to the red, and I'm really conscious of time, the black to the cherry red is collected using what is typically now called measurement, not assessment. Assessment is like going to a GP and getting a general health check. Measurement is actually taking readings on what may be symptomatic in the infrastructure. So roads, for example, David Clegg, Dan's team has collected 14 different types of criteria to measure the physical health of the road. Cracking, rutting, roughness, surface texture and the like. With facilities, you would typically look at the roof condition, the HVAC, the fit outs, the floor covering, the ceilings and the like. With footpaths, typically local government looks at steps, trips, shape loss, deformation, etc. So they vary depending on the type of the asset. Stormwater drainage is the hardest one because you've got to physically get in there with the camera. either a crawl one or a zoom one, to look at the structural deficiency as well as the capacity. Why state of the assets matters? So yeah, this is Hobart. So trivia question. What do you think is the replacement cost of Hobart's infrastructure, which in really layperson terms is what would it cost us to rebuild if it got wiped off the planet tonight?
Enormous. Enormous.
Enormous, yeah.
$30 billion.
It might be, but it's not. Well, if you include land and all the high value assets, yes. I'm just talking about infrastructure, roads, bridges, buildings, stormwater drainage, footpaths.
John Harvey, have a go.
Oh, it's a lot, yeah. More than I could afford, yeah.
$3 billion, isn't it?
10.
With everything probably around 5, but your infrastructure is about 1.7. That's what it's valued at.
Is that all?
Okay. That's a lot.
Yeah, okay.
And that's twice the national average. The average council is about $1 billion. There are some at about 250, 300 million. Like Breakaday, Flinders would be about 150 million. And then there's the bigger ones. Hobart, Sunshine Coast, for example, could be 25 billion. Just depends on the size and the enormity. And this is, Hobart's also pretty constrained. It's not, yeah. 1.7 billion, but here's the math. If I can have your attention on this, councillors, because this is your territory. That 1.7 billion gets eaten up because it comes down that slippery curve. What do you think that number is per year? National average. I'm giving it really simple.
Oh, come on, you're making it hard. Come on, just tell us.
Yeah, 150 million?
That annual consumption at Hobart is about 26 million. If you go with the national average, I'm just picking some numbers here. 1.7 billion is getting consumed at roughly about 1.7 to 1.8% per year. That's real. So 26 million per annum without doing any sophisticated modelling, just based on national average, would mean that every day at the City of Hobart, we are eating up half a street of footpaths, or we're eating up a really small kitchen in a community hall, or potentially even a really small pipe replacement. And that's a quite significant number. $72,000 per day is getting consumed. So in simple fiscal terms, if we don't replace at least 72,000, forget upgrades, forget new assets, if we don't replace at least 72,000 a day, we're going to end up with an emerging backlog. And that typically has been the definition of infrastructure gap, which is the difference between what I am consuming versus what I can afford to actually put back or pay for. And as that gap increases, it puts pressure on some of the nicer things that we would have typically wanted to do. The dilemma. Sorry, there's a typo. Ignore that spelling. Dilemma. That's how it's pronounced.
Yeah. If you hadn't told us, we wouldn't have noticed it.
This is where local government has got to from 1986 to now, because back then the only thing we had to worry about was renewing like for like, because asset management was thought about as into perpetuity. I will never need to upgrade that road or build a more modern facility or allow for general impact in the pavilions or climate change. That expectation wasn't there, so we were really focused on renewal gap, renewal planning, renewal programs, and eventually the wording shifted to capital planning, capital programs, capital budgeting, because we now have to balance the tension between new and upgrade. Same pot of money, maybe inflated, but now we've got to find, how do we find the sweet spot for all three? In the middle of the future demand, social cohesion, climate, and all that sort of stuff. So this is where the councillor involvement in strategic asset management has never been greater than now, ever, is because the dilemma is a set of choices. And this time we've spelled it right. The big question is, why is it called a dilemma?
No right answer.
Thank you. There is no right answer, and the answer isn't easily objectively solved with internal expertise. Becomes a dilemma because there are multiple choices. So how do you solve for dilemma?
You have a strategic plan.
Yes, which does what?
It
That prioritisation.
It accommodates what's coming. And look, I recommend you all watch Dispatches from the Far South, which was a talk on last Thursday night, which is about the melting of the western ice shelf, which is guaranteed to occur now. And that's a metre rise by the end of the century. And then post that, it's 7 metres rise once the rest of the ice shelf's gone in the next 200 years or so. When do we start preparing for that? At least the metre rise, I think, is pretty urgent. Not that I'll be here to see it, but you know, I might see a bit of it.
I guess that the strategic asset management plan guides the decisions because it's a choice.
Yeah.
And so it's a document that helps to formulate decision making, and that's what we sign off on. I suspect.
Except it's the most boring document you would ever expect a community person to read. Because it is still in local government, it is not fiscally fluent, and what I mean by that is it's not written in a language that a 12-year-old can understand. And it's got a lot of technical jargon, which it has to, but it has to be simplified to say, how do I solve for dilemma? And the only way we can solve for dilemma if there is democratic consensus. Because there is no right or wrong answer. So there has to be democratic consensus to solve for dilemma. And the only way we can solve for democratic consensus is if the assets and planning team were able to show us, as the members of the community, and the elected members as the ears and eyes of the community, what do I get in return in the end here for each of these options over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years?
But even that is building a rod for our back, because it's longer than that. We've got to talk about that next generation or two. And if we don't, like the town hall will have to move at some point. You know, we'll need to be operating out of Newtown in the next 100 years. How do we prepare for that?
Councillor,
Do
you
we
need to
just
stand
wait?
at an asset management conference and say that, because these guys, like the Davids, the Clevs and the Dans, are struggling to even have a 10-year conversation, let alone have a 20 or a 40.
Well, it's 4 years because we work in election cycles.
Right? So this is the missing piece, but the maturity has significantly improved. Like 20 years ago, you never had a mayor that spoke anywhere beyond just standard renewal and a 4-year program. Everything was around the operating surplus in the P&L. The whole focus was operating surplus in the P&L, because in the absence of any of this, the operating surplus was driven by depreciation, and that's all we had. And there's nothing wrong with that back in those days. But now, a real operating surplus has to be looking at 20, 40, 60 years to say, for each of these options, what do I get in return? And what could occur over the lifetime? And we're not having those board conversations. And simply having a tick box strategic asset management plan that sits on the shelf with some glossy paperwork is not going to solve it. I'm not being patronizing, but I'm just saying elected members need to come to the table for this conversation. You need to push the exec to provide you with the information you need for democratic consensus, and the exec needs to then have a culture that embraces this type of assessment so that the answers can be sought with the best available data. If you only spend 16 million as the first cut modelling that your team has done, this is what you end up with. At the start, for transport, 4% of your infrastructure is in poor and very poor state. The average portfolio is about 70%. Of that, 4% is in poor and very poor state. But taking a share of 9 million of that 16 million for transport in 10 years' time ends up with another 1.5% slipping in there. 1.5% of potentially $600 million is quite a lot of money. It's like interest rates. Hurts. Buildings, although the data isn't absolutely rock solid, we've been able to model on what is available, and again there is a slip. Stormwater is a clear slip, but that has got to do with the issue with the rivulet, right? Yeah. So those numbers have to be taken with a bit of a grain of salt. With the rivulet in the register issue here. But fundamentally, what Hobart has is the ability to say, if I spend 16 on renewal and 14 on new and upgrade to do the wish list or the other nice stuff you want to do, what does that buy me? Or if I spend all of that 30 on simply replacing like for like because I have no other choice, what is the outcome? Or if you find a sweet spot, and I'm not saying we're solving this today, these are very preliminary numbers. These are to give you an impression of the fact that your team is able to provide you this level of information should you wish to indulge in the strategic asset management discussion. And what this is saying is with 24 million I can end up with a little bit better, significantly better, but that means if I do that, something else has got to come out of the box. It's a choice. It's a choice that will require consensus, which will then set the budgets, which will then develop the capital works program as it should be done from a service level perspective. Make sense? So the choices are not that hard because they are impacts to cover. Or you could absolutely slash the renewal and splurge on these things. I'm not saying splurge in the wrong way, sorry, in a bad way, and go for these because the community is demanding those. But then the impact is the existing infrastructure starts to significantly get into the poor and very poor a lot quicker than we would want to. So internationally, we call it rethinking budgeting because the logic and the math has changed. We're no longer operating in an environment where operating surplus drives how we budget and make decisions. What drives how we make budget decisions as public sector now is to make sure that the very poor doesn't get to something like a 12 or a 15%. Because when that happens, guess what happens? Go back to that curve. If the reds and the cherry reds are starting to be 12 to 15% of your portfolio, guess where your depots are spending most of their time? Fighting fires on the reds and cherry reds that constantly keep failing. The old HVAC, the broken down car, that type of analogy. And whilst they're doing that, where are they not working?
Doing the pepper, salt and pepper.
They have to be on the salt and pepper stuff, which is the opportunity Australia has, because we're not at that point where we've got to that significantly eroded 12, 15, 20% in poor and very poor. We're still in the 4, 6, 7, 10 sort of range. And when that opportunity exists, strategic asset management really becomes important, because for a council like this, every 1% of the 1.8 billion is an extra 18 million that has to be found. Not in 1 year, but that 18 million might be over 5 years, but still a lot of money. So that's the rethinking budgeting logic, is I don't have one choice only. It is my future funding is not driven by depreciation. Depreciation is an input to my P&L, but my long-term asset management plan is actually showing me how I need to spend and how much I need to spend in order to keep delivering the service levels. So just want to, conscious of time, finish off with, in terms of public sector across the world, every council is looking, not every council, most councils are looking at how do I lift that renewal funding progressively over time, but how do I also get investment in for new and upgrade. So the one piece which I'm personally finding across local governments that's becoming a new niche is grant applications, because there is plenty of federal and state money available for the new and upgrade type of stuff, but we need skills and resources as a public sector to be able to sell the story of why we need to attract that funding. Debt funding is something that other councils have looked at, but then the long-term asset management plan has to have a line item to repay that debt. And unlike the US, hopefully, if we do that here, we'll make sure that the debt and the life of the asset kind of coincide, and they're not way distant from each other, which causes lots of accounting headaches. And absolutely finally, if these three things are done well, then having an advanced 4 or 5 year capital work program, which is linked to the councillor sort of term, also brings in procurement efficiencies. And this has really happened in local government, where 5 year programs on roads or facilities can buy the services in a lot more cost effectively than piecemeal year on year. There's no rocket science in that piece, it's just getting to that piece from a strategic perspective. So I want to finish off with the custodians around this table are actually the custodians of infrastructure for this city. We collectively represent accountability, governance from a long-term planning perspective. Music to my ears, councillor, if you are happy to stand up and say, why don't we look at 50 years or even 100 years in terms of intergenerational equity, but that's emerging, it hasn't happened yet.
Well, it's not emerging, we've been saying it for 50 years already.
It's slowly
no
starting
one's
to...
paying attention.
Yeah, it's 1% says it, then 3% says it, then 10% says it, we keep chipping and one day the tree falls.
Or one day the
or the town hall has to be moved. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you
for your presentation. I certainly learned a lot. I'm conscious of the time. If anyone has any pressing questions, let's do them. Otherwise, we can always contact Director Reid and you can play point, if that's okay. So Alderman Bloomfield's got a hand up for one. Go for it, Alderman.
Is this going to be part of your ongoing presentation with how you'll present to us? Because I know that you've introduced earlier things to help us understand.
Yeah.
Because as much as I appreciate that we kind of guide overall, we're never going to know what the actual position where everything stands and what the impact of our decisions could be. We need to always know that as well, which is where this is where you get really valuable. So I'm grateful to know. Thank you.
Yeah, so workshop number one, there'll be a series of workshops. Obviously we'll have the new council as well at the same time. We may need to do a little bit of a repeat depending on what happens with the council set up, but the intention is to step councils through this whole process until you've got the stamp in front of you and you've got the supporting information that actually goes with it as well at the same time, which is based on what Ashay was talking about tonight. So yes.
Councillor Harvey.
Where's council at with ground truthing all of the stuff we're talking about? Have we eyeballed all the things that we have, or are we just guesstimating things or driving past? AI is telling us that's okay, that's okay, that's okay.
Quite a bit of information about our roads because they're really visible, and we've been doing condition assessments for quite a period of time, and we've just done our latest condition assessment. For buildings, we've done some work in terms of condition assessments on those as well, but we need to do a little bit more. and we'll need to do a little bit more on some of our open space assets. But the bit that is difficult for all councils to grapple with will be things like our stormwater assets. So we're a very old city there, we've got some very old infrastructure that's in place as well at the same time. So you're limited to what you can CCTV and get condition assessments actually on. But there's also other issues that are actually driving stormwater as well at the same time, which is climate change and so forth. So we have to actually take all those different factors into account. So part of our assets, good data. Some of the other assets there, we're going to be, be the next 2 or 3 years' work where we actually get a little bit better at actually putting that together.
I'm sorry, Chair, and just on the future scenario stuff, I would love to see scenarios where we say, well, this asset needs to be renewed. However, in the next 50 years, the anticipation is that this will be underwater. It's like doing stuff down at Cornelian Bay.
Yep.
You know, it'll be nice for a decade or 2 or 3, and then suddenly it's got to be removed because it's in the way now, because it's inundated, it's going to wash away. So how do we conclude that the future scenarios, 50 to 100 year scenarios?
We already do a little bit of that already. So we know there's some areas which are going to be affected from a coastal perspective type of thing. So some of the infrastructure we're putting in there, there's nothing wrong with putting a toilet block in there. You can actually move a toilet block to nothing wrong with putting one in there and accepting the fact that it's only going to be there for 30 to 40 years. Maybe it's got a life of 50 or 60 years.
Like a brand new sewage plant.
I guess that's something to add as well. Did you have something to add?
Well, basically, when your information becomes mature, you can physically improve what is already there in terms of the modelling, and you can see that there's a number of scenarios for each asset class that looks at the current health versus where does that hit.
Is this a real dashboard for us?
Yeah, this is yours. And you can then look at the detail to say, okay, what does that do over a period of time to the proportion in red and cherry red? If I really had that much money to spend. Now that's an extraordinary amount of money. And investigate the scenarios to compete with each other, to then say what happens to the health, what happens to the life of the individual assets, and therefore how much money do I need to spend on each of these programs to keep it above that mark.
Is this new?
It is new. This is what we've been working on for the last 12 months or so. So this is my introduction at the start there to say the work we've been doing in the strategic asset management space. So this is part of it, if you like. So yes, it's a new bit of software, but it's not sort of published at this stage there because there's still some work.
I'm just giving you an example that
I'm impressed with that.
Over the next 4 to 5 years, there is a genuine opportunity in local government to say budgeting is not just last year plus or minus 5%. Budgeting is democratic consensus based on a service level we would like to achieve. Doesn't mean we can afford everything, but at least we know the impact.
Yeah. I'm going to take one more question from Councillor Dutta and then we must
just a comment.
Councillor Dutta, go for it.
Just a comment. Prabhuji, this is absolutely very impressive.
Thank you.
You shifted my thinking, and I think this is quite enlightening for me, so thank you. And the logic that it had and the steps that you've put. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
It is really simple. There's no rocket science in this type of stuff.
Thank you for your expertise in your presentation and for organising, Director Reid. Appreciate that. We're going to move on, but if you do have any follow-up questions, feel free to contact David or the CEO. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We have one more item before we move into the closed. I'd like to invite Ms. Ruby Wolf up to the table to talk to us about urban tree strategy.
Okay, so just before Ruby starts, this is another body of work which we've been working on for quite a period of time, and we've also been doing a lot of work across different areas of council that actually get affected or have a leaning into this. Yep. So we've done quite a bit of work in the last probably 3 or 4 months, maybe a little bit longer, in particular on that, in terms of actually bringing some of the other different areas of council together. So this is just building on the strategy that was originally in 2017, so we've got to the point of getting almost a draft strategy, but this is just the opportunity to touch base with council before we actually move to that point. So I'm going to hand over to you, Ruby.
Thanks, Ruby.
And I guess just jump in with questions as I go through this presentation. So this is on the urban tree strategy. As David said, we have a street tree strategy which was endorsed in 2017. So I think it's really important firstly to start off with the scope of this strategy. So it is about urban trees. We obviously have many trees in our bushland reserves, and the management of those is detailed in other council, so biodiversity action plan. So the focus of this is really trees in our streets, parks and private urban spaces. And we've also been hearing throughout this process about not just trees, but other green elements like green roofs and walls and planter boxes. So the next few slides are on what, data we've been using to feed into the updated urban tree strategy. And first of all, it was a review of the 2017 strategy. So the 2017 strategy introduced a 40% urban canopy cover target by 2046. And that was a simple call to action that's been the foundation for progress for the past 9 years or so. And the strategy's had a significant impact on the operational day-to-day decision making, particularly in the relation to removal of public trees. So before this strategy, we didn't have any policies around when council would remove a tree or not. So I guess the thing that really stood out to me was the maturity that the council has gone along or through since getting that 2017 strategy, how we've developed sort of the governance mechanisms, the procedures, the guidelines, the policies and the plans around tree management as a whole. So there were 49 actions in that 2017 strategy and 45 have either been completed or integrated into business as usual. So it's really time for a new agenda to set the direction for the next 5 years. So another thing that's feeding into the development of this strategy is we did a lot of community consultation. So November 2024 to February 2025, we went out to the community really before we drafted anything, and we just wanted to say, what do you think about trees? Here's what we've been doing so far. Here's what's worked, here's what's not worked, but what do you think? And that was, so we got over 500 surveys from the community from that engagement process. We did 209 presentations to 209 people. And 12 pop-up sessions. So we spoke with as many different groups as we could, including sort of the city economy, all of the workshops. I think I presented it, as well as the Tasmanian Arb organisation, so industry groups, children and young people, the multicultural community, and the Access Advisory Committee as well. So we gave away close to 1,000 trees as part of that engagement as well. So what we heard from that process was remarkably consistent in the feedback that we got. So 96% of respondents believe that the city should plant more trees on council land. 89% believe that it's important for the city to support residents to plant more trees on private land. And 90% agree that Hobart needs more tree canopy. So really consistent in the community saying to us, we want more trees, we want you guys to do it, we want help for us to do it. These are just some photos of that engagement process. So as well as that, we've got a database of all of the trees that we manage on our urban streets and parks. So we've got 22,501 trees. And it's really interesting doing this presentation after the last one and reflecting on sort of like trees are different sort of assets than a lot of what was spoken about before because they're non-financial assets, but we manage them like we do in very similar ways that we manage our roads and our footpaths. And it's quite a good database that we've got because what we're managing when we're managing trees is risk. So we want to make sure that our trees are safe and we have arborists inspecting them on a cyclic basis at, between every 1 to 4 years. So we have 22,501 urban trees, many more bushland trees obviously, but that equates to about 0.4 of a tree per resident. And again, so we've got 84% of our street trees are mature and 87% of our park trees are mature. So the reflection on that is that we've got great canopy now, but we're going to have a problem in the coming decades as those mature trees need to get removed. What are the ones that are coming through and replacing them? So we have a great diversity of species across those 22,000 trees, 770 different species of tree across 130 different genera. And genera is sort of like, so Eucalyptus globulus is the species and Eucalyptus is the genus. So it's that sort of higher level of group. And it's really important to have that diversity in terms of your resilience to pests and disease as well as to the changing climate. So we've done a climate suitability on our most common trees to see whether the top 10 most commonly planted park and street trees are well suited to future climate. And we've also looked at the health of the trees. So 60% of our park trees and 74% of our street trees are in good or excellent health. And I just calculated then while the last presentation was on, 5% of our park trees and 2.8% of our street trees are in very poor health.
Councillor Loberger.
I just had a couple of little questions just about all the tree stuff, I guess.
Yep.
I just wondered, I saw the numbers and there's this really high support for fruit trees, and I've sort of been through that debate myself quite a few times. And I just wonder if maybe when we do these exercises in the future, we can actually raise some questions first to make people think a bit more about it. Things like who's going to pick it? Is it still edible with road vehicle emissions on it?
Fruit trees, you mean?
Yeah. Who's going to pick the fruit? And what happens if it falls and creates a risk? It becomes slippery or rodents start eating it on the thing. These are some really practical sort of flow-ons of planting fruit trees, and I just think it sounds like a great idea that, gee, there's this huge number of people that said we need more fruit trees, but they might not like what they get if you plant one outside their house.
You're completely right, and we come across this a lot. So pretty much any community presentation I give, people say, can we have more fruit trees? And I think from my perspective, it's easy to raise those concerns and say no, because they do, like I can think of the examples of trees that are very problematic that drop fruit, and we've had to remove one or two because of dropping on cars. But I think it's more, what's the unmet need there? And are there places where we could be planting trees, fruit trees, that are appropriate? So the ones that I think about are the C3 apples along the rivulet and the apricots along Newtown. So it's not just a straight no, it's where can we put them that actually makes sense and works?
Or do eat them. Like, I watched the guy, talk to the guy every year pruning those trees.
Yeah.
He spends 4 or 5 days there pruning those trees. I've never seen anyone eat the fruit. Even the possums don't like them. It's really challenging. Why would these
the
really
heritage
crappy
apples.
fruit? The
Yeah.
heritage apple trees.
Yeah.
Maybe they've got to be turned into scrumpy or something.
Yeah, I think maybe that's what some of them are, is they're supposed to be cider apples rather than, But a few years ago...
There's some almond ones though where people go in and, like, towards King Street down the bottom there, there's like almond trees and stuff, I think. People go in and harvest,
And the ginkgo. We collected all the ginkgo nuts one year and they all went fermented.
Yeah, someone definitely maintains those apricots and picks them. I've seen them definitely doing it. I think the residents of the street maybe, or the nursery.
Yeah, yeah. And we've certainly pruned them before as well. Yeah.
All right, crack on.
So the other bit of data that we've gathered for this strategy is tree canopy mapping done by GeoNeon. So there's so much data in this that I don't, that it's sort of easier to digest, not in a big block. But I've just tried to pull out a few interesting pieces here. So our 2025 urban canopy cover is 28.8%. And that's a 2.2% decline in urban canopy since 2017. Public land has stayed roughly constant. Private land has decreased, but most of that decrease was actually between 2017 and 2022, and that's really stabilised in the past 3 years. Hobart, the suburb of Hobart, is the lowest canopy cover suburb at 7.7%, closely followed by North Hobart, and the highest canopy cover suburb is Ferntree at 87%, which probably isn't that much of a surprise. But for the first time in 2025, we calculated tree canopy around schools and bus stops. And I guess that's because of these sort of emerging literature and evidence around people walking to school, so children walking to school and needing to be sort of shaded, as well as evidence around vulnerable communities catching public transport and needing that shade, particularly in summer. And so what GeoNeon have done for us is they've taken a few indices. So they've looked at low canopy cover areas, areas with particular heat susceptibility and social vulnerability, so vulnerable populations, and created a prioritisation index which looks like this, where the yellow streets are very high priority for tree planting. So this is a really powerful tool for us to use now. So out of all of that, and out of all of, I guess, our collective internal stakeholders' knowledge about the challenges and opportunities for tree planting, there are sort of 16 that we've gone into or come up with in some detail. And one thing that comes up a bit is urban heat in Hobart, and I guess traditionally people don't really think of heat as being a problem in Hobart, but it will become increasingly so. And even at the moment there's a 9% increase in ambulance call-outs during heat waves in Tasmania. So I guess the message is, while winters are cold, the summer heat can be particularly harsh. And so it's thinking about where we can best place trees to combat heat. Coexistence with other infrastructure is also a really important one. Trees in cities live in a network of other assets, and they have to work around them and with them. And urban tree canopy and bushfire risk was something that came up from the community a lot. And I guess that's why we're really stressing that the scope of this is about those urban trees in sort of, those central cities rather than the peri-urban areas.
Can I ask just on that previous slide, Ruby, two observations. One, the coexistence, just that it says there are inherent conflicts between all these asset types, but I would contend that, in fact, with increasing rain events, that utilising street trees for stormwater retention pits and water-sensitive urban design, that they're actually synergistic in some way.
Yep.
And so it's quite concrete how that's written, but I think that they're synergistic. The other one is the private tree regulation, which we know that there is an active space happening. What's happening with private tree regulation? It might not be your bag to answer, but do we have any advances on Director Avey, perhaps?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The update is there's not really an update yet. We are still engaging a solicitor to get that legal advice that we've been asked to get.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Anything further from anybody else on this slide? No.
So future trees and climate is obviously a big one, and I guess there are two impacts with that. There's both the impact that the changing climate will have on our current and future tree population, but like you pointed out, there's also, Councillor Purcell, sorry, there's also the opportunity to for trees to help make our community more resilient. Both through heat and stormwater, that sort of thing. Yep. Tree risk management is a massive one for us, so making sure that it's not, we're not just planting trees and walking away, but we're thinking about public safety throughout that as well. So this brings us to the draft focus areas for the strategy, and we've got 4. So these are just the way that we're thinking about and breaking apart some of these challenges and opportunities. So there's tree planting and urban greening on council land. Best practice tree management, so that's how do we best manage our trees from a risk perspective as well as a health perspective. Community partnership, this was a really big one that came out through the community engagement, is how do we work with the community to support and encourage and influence tree canopy on private land, but also how do we work with other bodies, schools, education facilities, even, sort of roads that aren't ours to get trees planted. And then private development. So what is the impact on both positive and negative of private development on trees on council land as well as trees on private land. So each of these focus areas has a number of commitments. So commitments are things that we want to say that will form part of our normal operations and management. So they don't have a distinct end date, as opposed to actions which are sort of projects or initiatives that will come to an end once they're completed and they'll have a tangible outcome. So you've got them, all of the proposed ones here. I don't want to go through each one. I think that would be here for a long time, but I just have pulled out one from each section. So tree planting and greening on council land. As a commitment, I've just pulled out prioritise tree planting in areas with vulnerable communities, along walking and cycling routes and at bus stops. And as an action, so develop a 5-year planting plan that guides our annual tree planting program. For best practice tree management, I've got as an action, develop a plan how to best use wood generated from tree maintenance and removal. And this photo here is actually the sequoia, one of the sequoias that were recently removed, and it's getting carved into a platypus statue, which that engagement process that we did with the community and the EOI from that showed us how people really connect with wood as a resource coming from the trees that we manage, and how can we do that better to make that not a one-off but something that's more business as usual. Community partnerships. This is a great one and is sort of actively happening at the moment. Is we had a sort of starter, a once-off program to increase planting of trees on private property. This year we had our Great Tree Giveaway, and we're giving away 163 mature trees, so not tube stock, but actually something that costs somewhere between $100 and $200. And we did, I think, 1 radio interview and 1 article, and within 3 days we had nearly 1,000 applicants for the program. So there's a real appetite for council to help incentivise and support planting on private land. So how can we do that in a sort of more defined way? And then private development, similar to what you were talking about before, we've investigate the development of trees on private land by law. So where to from here? So get the feedback from today, incorporate that into a draft strategy, which we'll present to you, seeking endorsement for to undertake community engagement on an actual draft. Undertake that community engagement, incorporate the feedback from the community engagement into the strategy, and then present the final strategy for endorsement. That's the roadmap.
Thanks, Ruby. I love that you've chosen this intersection. I think it's Pottery Road. It's my best guess.
Yep.
But it's one of those intersections where you can see just how much public space is in an intersection that the intersection doesn't need to be designed that way. There's plenty of space for trees. But what I thought we might do just on feedback, if we can go back to the priorities slides, and go back to number 1. I think back one more. Perfect. Is this all of the priorities?
So these are the commitments.
Sorry, the commitments. These are all the commitments?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yep.
All right, so we might go feedback on because we've got 4 commitments. So if elected members have feedback on each commitment, and then we can take any general comments after that. So if you want to quickly read through tree planting and greening.
Can I ask?
Of course, go for it.
Yeah. Will you have a target, an urban canopy target?
Yep, so that's something we want to actually discuss. So the one we've actually got at the moment there is really good. It's aspirational type of thing there. One of the problems that we have, whether you've already seen since 2017 up to now, that you've actually seen a net decline in terms of how many trees are actually there. So it's good if we can actually achieve it. It's not so good if we can't achieve it type of thing. So I think we have to have some sort of target, if you like, that's actually there. It's very similar to the discussion we had about the waste management strategy there, and in terms of targets we've set for that and how they jump around a little bit as well at the same time. But I think that's a point of discussion, and I think it's something that we would like input in from the elected members as well at the same time to say what's going to be reasonable in terms of that, and the cost associated with it, the cost associated with doing that, and whether it's actually really achievable or not. I think so.
Yeah, I guess I'd just make a couple of points. I'd really like to see some benchmarking against like cities. We we benchmark whether we've got high rates or whether we've got enough spending on roads, and we should also benchmark, are we spending enough or a like amount as our capital city colleagues, as our sort of other benchmark cities on urban greening. And also...
So that's, sorry, is that new urban greening or just management as a whole?
I don't, probably a few different things, but, you know, like we need to know, are we keeping up with the neighbours? Are we keeping up with modern trends in cities? Because if we start really falling behind, just like we do with assets, people start going, oh, Hobart's that kind of place with no trees. And, but we might not be, we might be fine, but I think having that information is really important for us at the strategic level to know, you know, oh, we're not spending anywhere near the budget we should be. I think Adelaide, for example, which is much smaller than us, is on $5 million a year, but they also have a much more significant urban heat impact, so I appreciate they have to go a bit harder. But
can we keep on there just to these slides, and then we'll come back. I'll come back for general feedback because I think
I've deleted 7, so I'll just say those points. Yeah, so that's my main thing: is let's do some benchmarking, give us some of that strategic information, so that you know the next council can make a decision. On
fantastic.
That.
Councillor Harvey was on this one.
Look, it'll be about that one.
Go for it.
I looked at the collaboration, the engagement list. And there's a real blind spot in this council for the bush care groups. They're not mentioned in this, and they do the work already. How do we utilise the bush care group, who can spread out from their patches, to do a lot of this work rather than rely on the council to do these things? I know, how many trees did we plant in the last 12 months, for example?
350 roughly.
All right, so the bush care group's probably planted 3,000. So they're carrying the weight of greening the city in the work they do, because they also maintain stuff. They go back, they water, they weed, they pick up the rubbish, that sort of stuff. So I think they need to play a prominent part in greening the city. You know, that acknowledgement. There's 500 people who belong to the bush care groups, and we ignore them regularly. You know, like the last meeting we had, they didn't, in the health and wellbeing strategy, they didn't get a rate. You know, we pushed it in, and hopefully we can continue to work with the land care, bush care groups. That's the first point. Secondly, there's also the opportunity to do the reverse of the tree canopy, and you'll see what sort of a desert we have somewhere. I did that exercise for Glenorchy, and I mapped all the empty spots in Glenorchy using the same process as GeoNeon did for mapping our canopy. And Glenorchy's a desert. There's just no trees anywhere. It's incredibly barren. Rather than mapping the canopy, map the uncanopy. And then you can start to see the places where there's big gaps, and then you start to overlay it with the infrastructure. And there's lots of little parks and reserves that are low-hanging fruit that can take more canopy cover, ground cover in areas that are easy. And they're the sort of spots where the community can be engaged with that thing. Same as a collaboration on nature strip gardening. And there's some collaborations that have occurred already where people are getting together and doing it for each other. They're the outcomes. And that also helps to drought-proof the city as well, because if they do it well, they can put that moisture into the ground. And that brings me to the next point, which I can't say the word, but there's opportunities to put more moisture into the ground by using certain techniques.
Don't
say it. And that's what they're doing in Scandinavia, where they have big pits, and they fill the pit full of that stuff.
We've done that here too.
We have. See, I don't know anything about that, and I'm the guy who talks about it all the time, but I know zero about it because no one gives me any feedback on anything.
Might be an opportunity to have a meeting with Ruby and you can discuss it in more detail. On this slide, is there anyone else yet, Councillor Coates?
Oh, look, just this is not scientific, but I've got someone who I know lives up Tolman's Hill, and you know about diversity of species, and you know I think part of that diversity of species can also be about beautification, and you know they love their suburb, but really don't like the fact of it. When they were building it, they didn't plant, you know, deciduous trees that go autumn colours, and you know that beautification piece where sometimes you go down a street and you know they are consistent on that street, but it's all and you know that asking the residents what would they like actually in their street and all that sort of thing. But you know I think that obviously across the whole city we're going to have diverse species, but within pockets as a question of what's best in this area and what do people like.
That's very true. So I think you've nailed it there, where across the city we want to make sure that we've got a lot of different species, but within a street that, you know, there is that desire to have a consistent avenue planting that's not just sort of a mix of different things.
Yeah. And we all know, you know, you drive down, I don't know, like, you know, you go down Lord Street or something, and it's just, you know, beautiful trees, and you get the autumn colours.
Fitzroy Avenue.
Yeah.
Warwick Street for cherry blossoms.
Yeah,
The
well, at the moment, yeah.
Absolutely. On this one, for me, Councillor Kelly, you go, and then I'll go.
I'll just tap into what the Lord Mayor's saying about this tree canopy thing. I mean, that is it. If we've got to benchmark ourselves or check ourselves a bit of temperature where we're at, that canopy. I've asked in EM's email just recently about this. It'd be great for us to get more of an updated, like almost a dashboard of where this canopy is. That is what I want to know. We can talk to the cows come home about what sort we're putting in and all that, which is relevant. I'm not trying to demean that, but to me that's such an important part of the thing. And it'd be good to know the canopy, not only the urban. So the urban, just to make sure I get this right, is the urban areas.
Yes.
So that includes private and council land?
Yeah.
And then do we also do a survey on how much is on the domain, not lofty,
Yeah,
and all areas like that as well?
So we've broken
I'd like to know the whole
and we've
LGAs.
got that broken down in various different ways. So we've got it broken down by suburbs, by land use, by land tenure. So we've also got like what's the canopy cover on general residential versus low density residential, as well as public versus private, and across the whole of the municipality. So we do have that detail, and that will be in the strategy. This was just sort of an extract of that.
Because just what I want to know there, what the LGA is, and I'll just sign off on a few things now so I can shut up. The fact of the matter is we're decreasing the tree cover. I mean, alarm bells would be ringing, you know, and I just find it hard to believe it. In fact, I've got the answer, because we're doing all this good work. You see the tree units doing, and you look at the nursery, and I think, wow, we should have thousands of trees everywhere. But the satellite says it all, doesn't it? Which I'm a bit stumped with this whole thing. Now, a bit part of the answer to that is, I've got some land up West Hobart, a bit extra land. Unfortunately, I have to. I planted 12 trees this weekend, by the way. Dug holes, watered myself, and planted and watered and all that. So they're gum trees, and hopefully they'll be good for the area. But you know, I guess we're up against it if we're carving up land, and around me I've had 12 houses built, 5 houses built. It's just going to happen, isn't it? I mean, that's a bit of the reason why this urban tree canopy is decreasing. Some of these bush blocks are now being built on.
Yeah, and that's why we've deliberately sort of gone, well, what's urban versus sort of general Hobart, but also what's public versus private, so that we can track the change in canopy on private land versus on our land, and then also in the different land use zones.
And a big reason is something for us to consider when we look at this rates thing. I've said it before, but it just gets shut down every time. There are a lot of people with 2 blocks, or 1 big block. It's great to get the urban feel, but that's going to take away trees. So if we're serious about trees, we've got to at least be big enough to admit that's going to happen. I'm not saying we don't do that, but that's the fact of the matter. And why? We double the rates. I know people who've now sold blocks who were using an extended garden, and they've subdivided it, and the house is going to demolish all those trees on there. So we've got to back up against it. You know, we can mass plant on Knock Lofty, Devane, all these other places and get warm and fuzzy about that, but the areas that really need it are these hot urban areas, as you alluded to before.
Yeah. I mean, 7.7% canopy cover in Hobart, I think that's pretty striking, and saying that we need to plant more trees.
So that doubling rates has had a big impact, I can tell you right now. The final thing I'll say is, like we approved up Pottery Road a couple of years ago, another bush block with a whole heap of units and paving and all that. Not one tree was put on that. And the same up where I'm living, 5 houses have gone up. I've not seen one tree in these 5 new houses. A few little low-living shrubs.
Yeah.
We should be onto these people, even gifting them new. Here's 6 trees. We can send someone around and say, here's some trees, whatever.
That's exactly what we're looking to do through this strategy, because the 2017 strategy was a street tree strategy, so it was really blind to how do we influence and manage trees on private land, whereas, you know, after having done the canopy loss and seeing that that's a lot where our canopy is declining, is, well, what can we do on private land to encourage people to plant, keep and maintain trees?
Thank you, Ruby. If we can go back to that other
Yeah,
slide,
sorry.
I've just got
Yeah.
2 points to make on this one. I note that the all public realm upgrades language in point 3, I'd like to see that include asset renewal, not just upgrade. It might just be semantics, but like every time we resurface a road, we should be saying, can we put a tree in it? And the other thing is, I would suggest separating out road reserve from other council land, because the complexities, and we're talking about the fruit trees, that you probably don't want fruit trees on road reserve, but there might be places for little orchards in parks and stuff, and I think that the treatments required are distinctly different between reserves and parkland and road reserve. So, I mean, for me, I think that it makes sense to separate them out somehow in the strategy. Anyone else have anything on this list of priorities? No, let's go next one, Ruby, please.
So these are the actions for the same.
Yeah, I think we'll go across to the next one. Beautiful. Beth, do you want actions, Councillor Elliott?
Yes.
Yeah, go for it.
So number 4, develop a program around when a group of residents comes together. What do you think, is that program obviously be informed by a policy or guidelines that the council approves?
Yeah, so I think we're going to have to look at that very carefully in terms of the space, particularly in road reservations there. So you've got 2 places, you've got the footpath and then you've got car parking in the street. There's 2 places, if you like, where you could potentially put in trees type of thing. So actually being able to manage that with residents in different streets, you need a framework that actually goes with that as well at the same time. Otherwise, you sort of, you know, you're changing the rules as you go along there. So you need to have something there, which is sort of an endorsed way of doing it, I think. So that's what we'd be aiming to do. This is what we've been talking about with our internal tasks.
Because that's what I was worried about, is I'm sure that you could easily get half a dozen current residents to come together and say, we want to strip the parking, we want to put all this in, and then half of those move, and it does not fit the purpose anymore.
Yeah.
So I think it definitely needs to be a policy set by council first, and so there's consistency, not not evolving case by case.
Yeah, and like it'd be good to actually get to the point of actually treating trees just like assets, if you like, which is what they actually are. But, you know, the difficulty with it is people can become very attached to a tree that's actually there, but sometimes it's not actually the right tree to actually be in that location as well at the same time. So it's those things there we have to actually look at very carefully as well.
Okay, thanks. That's it on that one.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Next slide, please. Best practice tree management, any feedback on this one? I'll just give you guys 30 seconds to
Yes,
whiz.
number 2 I had, when you say make the council's tree inventory accessible to the public, do you mean the nursery stock or the...
No, sorry, I mean the data. Like we have the 22,000 trees. People often go, oh, what are the trees on my streets? And some councils have just a public database of all the trees.
So like a directory?
Yeah, just a map with all,
We can change the wording.
Yeah.
And then also on that one, I think it was at the top, ensure significant trees. Oh no, that's on council land.
While you're looking, Councillor Elliott, just Lord Mayor's got a hand up. We'll go to Lord Mayor if she's got a question ready.
It was just around the significant tree register, whether that will some other councils, it's just open all the time. It's not like, oh, we're going to do it every 5 years. It's just Is that what we've been moving towards?
It's probably a question for Karen, that one. But no, so I think the amount of resourcing, I understand, is quite significant too. Yeah. Did you want to jump in?
Hold on,
It's
Councillor
not on the next 12-month work plan.
It's not. It's not on the next 12-month work plan. Councillor Kelly?
Urban tree canopy, why is this only every 3 years? I mean, shouldn't this be done, am I treating that or something?
Because we engage an external consultant to do it. It's something that they have to sort of go get the satellite imagery for, do the modelling, and then come back and report on it.
Really?
Yeah,
I thought 3 years for just like.
It takes time to grow.
Yeah, I get that, but still, it's not the growing ones that we're looking at; it's the ones that are getting removed too.
True.
Right. So it's 2 sides of the story here, and you're putting your head in the sand if you just thinking we're looking at the stuff that's going up.
So I guess, Councillor, it's a bit of a balancing act with the cost of the consultants.
Well, I just thought this day and age with satellite imagery and all that stuff, obviously it's not easy to do.
No, and it's the modelling, it's not just the satellite imagery, it's the sort of modelling expertise that the GeoNeon have to so it's a service that we purchase.
I thought we'd get Craig with his drone to go with the software.
And just
seriously,
yeah.
that's the sort of way
Thanks, Councillor
you
Kelly.
can count livestock and everything now.
Yeah.
Councillor Elliott, did you have another one?
No,
for
that's
this
fine.
one? Happy? All right, next one, please, Ruby. Community partnerships. Again, 30 seconds to read through it. Councillor Elliott, if you got one, just go.
Yes,
Looks
is this the
like details.
giveaway stuff?
Yeah.
I can't remember where I had that one listed. But you've spoken about giving away all the trees and 1,000 trees and all that sort of stuff, and we're going to be giving away established ones. I really worry when I see those up, how many actually get planted, how many actually get watered, how many survive, and I got extra nervous when you're talking about mature age, like advanced trees, because there's a big difference between chucking out at the odd, stock. What follow-up is there?
So we give people guidance on how to do it, but we don't sort of go to their property and go, have you planted that and how often are you watering it?
No.
So there's a bit of trust there, but I guess there's a balance too between like there's land there, it's relatively, in terms of us giving away a tree versus us planting it in a footpath and watering it and maintaining it forever, there's like a balance there. So it's just...
I do worry about that, and I don't know, just the concept of just giving it away doesn't sit overly well with me. And yeah, do wonder about the follow-up. Also on page 2, increase private property planting, that's on there, isn't it?
That's number 1. Is that what you mean? Increase the planting of trees on private property?
Yes. So obviously when new homes are developed, especially in high-risk areas, there's the bow ratings and all that sort of stuff. How, and you talked about before about giving away established trees, and you mentioned, the new builds and there's no trees there. I just wonder, what I would feel comfortable with is the council's role being to say, hey, these are great trees for the area, you could plant this distance from combustible stuff, like giving guidance out there rather than literally giving away plants.
And we've tried to cover that in number 4. So develop resources to encourage people to plant trees in their gardens, including suggested species lists.
So when you are giving away like established trees, will you be giving advice that they shouldn't be planted within this distance and be conscious of not impacting your bow compliance and all that?
Yeah, and yes, we do. So we give them a pamphlet on what they should consider when they're planting, and we're also prioritising giving away trees in urban areas that are particularly low canopy cover, that sort of will shade the street. So there's nuance to that as well. Whereas when we give away trees at sort of tube stock trees at bush care, often that's more a bit of, pick them up and plant them.
Yeah. Okay, so just in speaking out loud, it synthesised down my views on this, which will probably be in the minority. But I support giving, bush care, give them all the rootstock they want, knock yourselves out because it gets planted and maintained and all that sort of stuff. I don't support us giving away trees, established or rootstock. I'd rather have that giveaway money go off people's rates. I do support information and education. Most of our ratepayers, we're actually in an affluent area. They can afford to go and buy their own rootstock. These are people that have, $5,000 e-bikes. They can do that. So I don't support giving away trees, but do want the comms. The other thing I had in there about bonds, was it bonds about damaging
That's
trees?
on, I think, the next one.
Stand by for that one if you can, Councillor Elliott. Councillor Harvey, then Councillor Coates.
Yep. Dot point 3 there, work collaboratively with other Tasmanian councils. Like I've mentioned, Glenorchy is a desert. It's really quite, startling when you can drive through streets in Glenorchy and you see not a tree. There's not a tree on the nature strip, there's not a tree in the front yards, and there's not a tree in the little tiny pocket parks that are all over the place in Glenorchy. It's like, wow. From a collective perspective, if we're going to reduce the heat island effect in the next 50 to 100 years, whatever period you want to set on it, then we've got to work, we definitely have to work with them because they'll have an impact on our climate as well. And the other one is a partnership with the cemetery, who are a massive, I don't know how many hectares they are, but they're quite a significant area. And I've mentioned this every time we talk about trees since 2017, I think. That we need to have a partnership with them to see how they can start to introduce more species into the cemetery to create both shade and to connect through to the our multi-million-dollar effort with the Newtown Rivulet as well. So, you know, to link that through to Cornelian Bay, as well as the area around the bottom, which I see is really changing in a good direction. So I would encourage a development partnership, tree partnership with cemetery, and working with Glenorchy should be a priority because there's lots of low-hanging fruit there that could be done with a big tree planting campaign. How do we do that? We've got a nursery. Have they got a nursery? Can we supply trees for them, both advanced and tube stock? And I know they're working on a tree strategy as well. But
yeah. Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Good points. Councillor Coates?
Yeah, look, just a quick question, sort of thought I've had just based on the free giveaways. I don't have any issue. I can see where you can do it more strategically. You know, like a new subdivision goes in. Obviously, there's not many trees, so just build all new houses, but you might want to give everyone the same style of tree at the same time, and so it all grows up, has a look and feel. But I was just wondering, I mean, I think there's only, 2 left, Chandler's and Newtown Nursery, but just have of course, yeah, if you ask a nursery, do you want us to give away trees? I'll say no. So it's a bit more nuanced than that. But have you had much feedback from, I don't even know if there's any others in the City of Hobart, but have you had any feedback from the actual professional sort of private nursery businesses?
Yeah, so we obviously do, we buy plants from them, and some of the plants are from them. So because that program was run, I think we got the funding last year, we didn't have the sort of lead time to buy, to grow all the trees that we would need to an advanced stage. So we do purchase trees from them for our own programs. We have a good relationship with them.
Yeah, cool. Okay, no, that's great to hear, actually. So,
yeah. I think it was last year we did a Hello Hobart sort of promotion of nurseries in
because there's one lower along there, there's the Chandler's. Is there only 2 left? What was the one?
There's Plants of Tasmania. Yeah.
Mitre 10 as well, Ridgeway.
Yes,
yeah. There's a few around.
Yep.
There's more than 2. Cool, let's go last slide and then we can crack on to the final items within the close. Feedback from this one, Councillor Elliott?
I don't support bonds being introduced. I would have thought that that would just be another deterrent, another barrier to development. Obviously, I think we require photos and things like that, and if there was an issue, we can always understand we could put in a claim for damages, but no to more barriers.
Anything further, elected members? Just going to really briefly ask, I know it's past time, but is there anything really pressing that people want to communicate? Otherwise you can communicate with David and Ruby via email and they can take feedback on board out of session. We are tight on time. Thank you, David. Thank you, Ruby. And thanks to the staff. I know we're a tiny bit behind schedule. I think one of the report items took a little longer than we anticipated. Questions without notice, elected members? Are there any questions without notice in close? And I've skipped an agenda item. Sorry, Councillor Elliott.
Yes.
Hold on 2 seconds, Councillor Elliott. I need to move responses to questions without notice first. I do. Can I have someone move responses without question? Thank you, Councillor Lohberger. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Opening questions without notice, Councillor Elliott.
I just want to ask the equivalent to the responses to questions without notice about the legal and costs involving all elected members. Can I please have the details of it? Because in the response it refers to me, so if we could do it for all elected members.
It'll take a little while, but we can certainly provide it.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Councillor Harvey.
Could I have a list or a breakdown of all of the civic events that Hobart has had over the last, say 12 months, and whether or not we're being invited to those events? Because I've noticed quite a serious decline in the invites to civic events that have happened in council. I see them online, and it's like, one example was the Japanese delegation that came. I've been attending the Japanese delegations for nearly 20 years, and I saw it online that it had happened, and I wasn't aware of it. I did get to take them for a walk along the rivulet and find a platypus. They found it first, but it would have been nice to have been invited to whatever ceremony or whatever activity occurred. So I'd like to know how many civic events there's been in the last 12 months and how many of those we've all been invited to.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Anything further? No. Thank you. Elected members will close the open and open the close. If I can have a motion to do that, please. From Councillor Coates. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Doors closed.